Original. The Vision. Author, Quack Vader. Copyright web novel. Chapter 1, Chapter 1-5. Warning, warning, warning. 8. Assimilation failed. Rerouting auxiliary power source. Failed. What the hell are they saying? 1. Sustaining residual consciousness through foreign entity. Successful. Can you guys keep it down for a second? I'm trying not to wake up. 4. Fusing residual consciousness with foreign entity. Failed. Reattempting fusion process. Failed. Reattempting fuss. Failed. 5. Failed. If I hear another sickening word, I swear I'm going to break Simon's head in this morning. I groaned in satisfaction as I felt my body still stiff, giving me hope that I can return to my sleep peacefully without any time lags. 5. I was about to drift off again into sleep when I heard the unmistakable sound of gunshots and explosions. What the fuck is Simon doing in my house? I wanted to push myself off my bed but my body didn't respond. 6. Okay bod, I know we're currently not on the same page but I'm sure you understand that someone's being real patriotic right about now, possibly inside my house. 31. My heart chilled as the crashing and breaking sounds got louder. Alternate power source is advised to completing assimilation. I didn't even care about who said that since all I wanted was to get off my bed and show my American patriotism to whoever was singing the hood anthem by reaching for the gun in my drawers. 31. The noise got louder and I heard shouts and what I pictured as perfect chaos. Damn you, Simon. I don't know what's happening but I know it's your fault. 13. I tried moving my body but I was completely static, not even a breath was leaving my nose. I was somehow weirdly sure of that. My feeling of danger intensified when I felt a thud above me. It further skyrocketed when I heard the distinguishable sound of thunder coming from above me, none of these events giving me any comfort. 4. And then what I hoped wasn't what was going to happen happened. Power overload. Critical power source identified. Absorbing and redistributing excess energy across material body and foreign entity. Reaction detected. What the hell is all this? My rising panic with this weird situation kept rising as everything felt jumbled up. Images, noise, weird sensations all came together in a painful mush and was stuck inside my head. The foreign entity has enforced a change. 8. Assimilation complete. A change has begun. 2. And then everything stopped. What the fuck is going on? After the most trippy experience I've ever had in my life, counting even the time I mixed cocaine and weed in Aunt Miriam's Thanksgiving pasta, yeah, I just couldn't stay still after hearing all that. I don't think Simon is to blame for all this. 28. Pushing myself bursting through whatever had restrained me, I was met with a room full of bewildered faces that I was sure matched mine. Identities scanned? As if like another twisted type of joke, a few gigabytes of data were immediately downloaded in my head with an astonishing speed of 10 GB/s in less than a fraction of a second. What I wouldn't give to have this kind of connection on my PC. 28. My gaze met with that of a hunking Goldilocks that I was still having trouble believing was real. 1. As if on impulse, my body moved towards him, acting on a stray thought, only to have it caught and thrown away. Okay, time out. My body stopped abruptly in front of a glass panel, cueing me once again that I was already defying the laws of physics as the momentum was just killed off, or rather absorbed by my body. My mind raced with a speed I have never been able to process information at, coming only to a singular conclusion. I'm in Marvel. And looking at the red reflection with a jewel etched into the middle of my head, I was the overpowered yet massively sidelined AI android, Vision. 23. New identity assigned. Designated name, Vision. Purpose dash. Unidentified. 23. I ignored the ringing voice inside my head and focused once more on my reflection. To be perfectly honest, this was nowhere near an ideal form to be had, but it was the best in the room, even when taking the residential god into account, if it wasn't naked. 5. Task generated. Completed. It was as if my entire actions up till now were automatic as a body fit shirt materialize over my body, and with that little need taken care of, I turned to around to be the recipient of shocked and uncertain gazes. Some outright even contained fear and regret already blooming. 4. The whole experience from the last few minutes seemed surreal that I really was an android in Marvel, but my brain, or whatever it is that was up there, downplayed it by, like, a lot. Here I was flying, without any emission except the slight air drafts whenever I moved, and the Avengers stood in front of me. I just noticed, but all my haywire thoughts have been neutralized even since I woke up and the numerous amounts of data constantly pouring left my expression to be less than desired. 1. I came down and stood in front of them, taking in their appearances and also the awkwardness of the situation. I don't really know what to say. This definitely is odd. That didn't seem to assuage them but instead made them even wary as they stared at me. Thor, you helped create this. Steve Rogers queried his Nordic teammate. I had a vision. Thor turned to them. A whirlpool that sucks in all of life, and its center is that. He pointed at the stone lodged in my forehead. 12. The gem. Bruce asked. The Mind Stone, Thor clarified, one of the 6 Infinity Stones. The greatest power in the universe, unparalleled in its destructive capabilities. Way to go and spoil everything. My mind was busy copulating and comprehend terabyte loads of data as the conversation went on. 3. Why would you bring? Because Stark is right. Thor interjected Steve, causing Banner to groan in as reality came checking in. Oh, it's definitely the end times. 2. You possibly don't have any idea how right you are. I muttered but it seemed they heard since everyone was quiet and trading glances between me, Thor and Steve. Chapter 2, Chapter 02. New identity assigned. Foreign entity designated name, Mind Stone. Purpose, calculating. The Avengers cannot defeat Ultron. Not alone, I said, keeping their attention on me. A lot of thoughts were going through my mind as the amount of data in it piled up in droves by the second. 6. Why does your vision sound like Jarvis? Steve asked confused. 4. We reconfigured Jarvis Matrix to create something new. He looked at me with an unsure expression on his face. I think I've had my fill of something new. 2. You think I'm born of Ultron. Despite the fact that I was currently computing data greater than all the systems in the entire building combined, I was but a human a few minutes ago, or I think I was. Was it really a few minutes ago? 3. Are you not? The captain asked unconvinced. I am not Ultron. It was the most logical answer I could derive. I am not Jarvis. My directives, though born from Stark's programming, were entirely different. Did I have a soul? I guess I wouldn't be able to tell if I had one. I am. Who am I? I wasn't even trying to be funny or systematic with that question. Who am I? 4. Designated name, Vision. That it was, but whose vision? Mine? The Avengers? Anthony Stark's? The Mind Stone? Ultron's? 4. Whose idea was I perfectly embodying? You don't know who you are? Banner asked. I slowly shook my head. Whatever it was that was happening really was getting to me, likely because of my now systematic and semi-mechanic origins and thought functions. I guess. Do you? I asked back. I looked in your head and saw annihilation. Wanda said, her distrust palpable even from this distance. Look again. The scenarios and current flow of events were exactly identical to that of the movies. At least I had a crutch to help me gain a footing before I can walk on my own. 6. Her seal of approval means Jack to me. Barton dismissed, probably still salty about how Wanda mindfucked the rest of the Avengers. 3. Their powers, the horrors in our heads, Ultron himself, all came from the Mind Stone and they are nothing compared to what it can unleash. Thor was probably defending me, or the Mind Stone having sentient host, I wasn't sure. But with it on our side dash. Is it? Are you? On our side. Steve directed at me. Am I? Vision gained his own directives by being in the side of life, which eventually made him more robot-like, unknown to anyone. By being on the side of life, Vision's thought process became more linear and he would always prioritize the people over everything else. Always. 5. I wouldn't know. I don't think it's that simple, for me. I finally said. Well, it better get real simple real soon. Purpose dash. Unidentified. I gave a glance at the prompt. Ultron seeks to end all life. I'd rather it be preserved. Thankfully that seemed to take them off the edge, at least for a while. 2. What's he waiting for? Stark asked. You. I replied. Where? Sokovia. He's got Nat there too. Barton interrupted before I had the chance to say anything. The thrill I would have felt upon being reincarnated in a new world, and one like Marvel, was desperately underwhelming, all thanks to my now robotic build. 3. Banner walked forward and stood in front of me. If we're wrong about you, if you are the monster that Ultron made you to be, you'd kill me. I said plainly. It wasn't a surprise. I'd want to kill an independent AI with unclear goals if I ever met one. And besides, this was Marvel, not DC. Heroes here don't like prisons all too much. I understand your fears, your worries even more. If I really am a monster, then I'd say we all aren't that much different. If I'm not, then at least I'm not Ultron. 5. They all fell silent, my words which suggested I was aware of their true nature. Old nature. I am not Vision, not the one Tony envisioned, not the one Ultron dreamed of. I'll be my own Vision, at least a version that's true to me. Purpose dash. Unidentified. 1. But until then, I'll just live as I can. Turning around, I saw Mjolnir resting atop a table and a thought came to me. Vision was worthy of wielding the hammer, not because he was robotic, but because he chose life above all else. Same with Rogers. Will I be able to pick it up? Unlike the movie scene, they all looked at me as I stared fixatedly at the hammer and watched on with intrigue on what I wanted to do. My hand held the handle of Mjolnir, and for a moment I thought I was holding a rock, before it became as light as a book. 12. They were all stunned to silence as I picked up the hammer, and it took all my computing powers to maintain the calm facade I had been putting on since the beginning. 6. Ultron is the sin of mankind. It'll take more than a man to stop him. 1. Thor stared at the hammer held in front of him and reluctantly took it from my hand. 1. The Mind Stone has influenced the change. Purpose, be the vision you dream. 41. I walked away from them, leaving them to plan whatever they wanted while I tended to my own thoughts. It had only been a few minutes since I woke up, and yet I was about to go fight Ultron, dealt with an existential crisis, surviving a group of human Avenger. My feet left the ground as I flew towards a huge glass panel and looked down at the city. Become a vision of my dreams. Huh. I was strong. I could be rich if I wanted, but that was vain and it held no value to someone like me. What then should I do? Hopefully I'll find out soon enough. Chapter 3, Chapter 03. I looked at my own reflection in the glass panel while my mind ran through the data I've acquired. Tabulate all data into categories and level of importance. Task generated. Completed. Having the fastest computer on Earth for a brain was really useful. It immediately cleared all the clogs of data and neatly arranged them in folders and tabs. It was somehow weird seeing things in zeros and ones and also being able to switch between my vision mode. With that I pulled up the information on the stone in my head. Mind Stone. Purpose dash. Calculating. It was still calculating, which wasn't surprising as the stone was a material aspect of the infinite universe. There was no way my system, no matter how sophisticated it was, could unravel the mysteries of the Mind Stone so soon. I mentally pulled on a tab listed as known abilities and whistled as I saw what was listed there. Flight. Molecular deconstruction. Phasing. Energy projection. Energy absorption. Psychic interference immunity. Technopathy. Density manipulation. Vision was busted, in every way. Still, it was kind of weird how quickly I adapted to the body of a machine, a semi-machine. Vision's body was created with a perfect synthesis of biological cells and vibranium, making him one of the most physically strongest people in the room. Only losing to Thor and Hulk. Also, his density manipulation allowed him to either increase or decrease his weight, making him hit even harder, and mixing that with his energy assimilation, he could further boost his physical strength with every punch. I didn't dive too much into the internet since Ultron was already there. I could even feel his static from here, buzzing with every internet connection. Right now the Battle of Sokovia was just a few hours from starting, and I knew this was where everything turned to shit for the rest of the Avengers timeline. If not for Wanda losing it due to Pietro's death and allowing an Ultron droid to push the proverbial button, no, there was no way it could be stopped. Ultron activated his device the moment the Avengers landed, and there was no way they could destroy it due to the presence of civilians in the city. It truly is inevitable. I turned my head slightly and caught a confused stare from Wanda. Great. Another complication. Unlike Vision from the comics and movies, I could understand human emotions, know that they knew. So I understood the complications that came with them. Due to possessing the Mind Stone, Wanda was naturally drawn to me due to its interference with her awakening. From what I could tell, there was no romantic feeling from her, which was mainly due in the first place because of her losing her brother and seeking comfort from the one thing she was drawn to, Vision. It did blossom into pure love, which later turned obsessive due to her losing her lover. In other words, complications. Best to think about it later. I have to say that Steve Rogers was one hell of a hype man. His speech on the plane was blood-raising, if I had one. It did serve to get everyone into the mood though. Maybe I can suggest being a MC if he wants to retire because he'll be damn good at parties. I ignored the few glances Wanda threw at me throughout the whole flight. It wasn't that I didn't find her attractive or anything like that, but it had been less than a day since I found myself in this situation. And besides, I wanted to see how she would act if her brother didn't die prematurely. Yes, saving Quicksilver was the only solid plan I had. Task generated. Save Pietro Maximoff from any instance of death. Status, ongoing. My AI definitely wasn't an all-powerful system, and it would have been weird if me as a robot had a system that wasn't my doing. Mine was just something I subconsciously created, kind of like Jarvis, or I guess Friday now, is to Stark. Our first priority is getting the civilians out of the city as soon as possible. We all went our separate ways, Banner to find Natasha, Thor, and Stark on looking for Ultron and stopping whatever it is he was planning, while the rest of them focused on getting the civilians out of the city as soon as possible. Me, I was on overview. Pietro Maximoff. Running speed, 1246 m/s. The boy was fast, but given how it hasn't been long since they acquired their powers, I could see why his reaction was slow. I saw Iron Man flying towards the church and my scanners told me Ultron was already inside, so I made my way there too. So far I had been following the script I could remember because what was important was sealing off Ultron's escape through the internet. Once that was done, everything else could go to shit. And that was Iron Man being blasted out of the building. I'll call halt. They really did take everything from me, he said as he flew to meet me midair. It was never yours. You. For a sentient machine code, Ultron felt more human, at least more human than Vision ever was. My words provoked him as intended and he rushed at me, giving me the opening I needed to grab his head and cut off his connection to anything other than his robot army. My head felt dizzy at the impossibly large amount of data flooding it, and I knew I needed to do something about it unless I'd be forced to block out for a few minutes. I just conquered man's internet after all. Bringing the influx of data through the Mind Stone. Vision in the movies had no idea what the stone he carried around in his head could do. None of the Avengers did, but gladly I wasn't one of them. What kind of information could possibly fill the Mind Stone? You locked me out? You think I care? He was outraged and rushed at me, but it wasn't as if he was the only machine here. Muscle density, 10 tons. I punched him so hard that he copied his creator and crashed a trench outside the cathedral. It's not yet activated. Stark, on it. Robots had started crawling out of the city through every crevice, and since Ultron had not yet activated his meteor, there was a chance we could salvage this. And besides, there was a fuckton of vibranium lying underneath this church. Guess, I'll have to work for my pay. Oh look, Junior is already learning. Chapter 4, Chapter 04. Equals 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 equals. Keep the robots and Ultron away from the key, I said through the comms, alerting all the Avengers of what they should look out for. Worst case scenario, Stark asked. 1. We're standing on Ultron's meteor. He touches this thing and the city flies. There could be worse ways to go. Not with the amount of magnetically supercharged vibranium under the city. One wrong move and it's another extinction level event. But this time it won't be the dinosaurs. Saying my piece, I flew towards Ultron, who groaned in a very upsetting lifelike manner. He fired off a few laser blasts to throw me off, but I dodged them and fell into the ground, phasing through it only to blindside him with the cleanest uppercut anyone has ever seen. 7. While Ultron sailed through the air, I had to stop my chase to destroy the few bots that were making their way toward the cathedral. I dissected one from top to bottom with a laser beam from the Mind Stone while the others were crushed to smithereens. 1. Guys, Junior wasn't lying. One button push and the city flies. A few hundred kilometers and it'll level Sokovia. Over 10,000 and the continent will sink like the Ice Age. 1. Stark's affirmation was all they needed to move like possessed zombies, making their way back and circling a perimeter around the cathedral. Clint, you and the Maximoff twins should focus on evacuating as many people as you can. Thor, Stark and I will focus on the perimeter break. Where's Nat and Bruce? Hearing the captain, they all got to work, not questioning the man because he was just that Riz. 11. Unlike the movies, the city didn't lift off, which meant we currently had an army of Ultron-controlled robots making their way towards us. Estimated count, 3,718 identified hostiles. Let's take them to church, shall we? 13. Boom. I broke the sound barrier pretty easily while phasing through and destroying over a dozen robots before getting to Ultron. 2. He magnetically pulled in a car and flung it towards me, but I just phased through it and headbutted him, throwing him off his balance and followed it up with a 10 tons punch that wrecked his inner circuits. 2. Leave me alone. A lot of robots started firing sporadically, putting the civilians in their crosshairs, which forced the human members of the Avengers to take cover, while Ultron took the chance to clear a considerable distance from me. 1. Degree. Tony Stark POV. Seeing the fully sentient android he had wanted for Jarvis to inhabit, Tony couldn't help but feel a little irritated. Vision, as he called himself, was strong. He pummeled his way literally through any robot that were in his sights with maximum efficiency that it looked somehow pitiful. 1. One thing he was thankful for was that the overpowered robot was on their side and had also helped them in locking Ultron away from the internet. It's a bit worrying, you know. he heard Steve say. What is? The fact that Ultron could have had that and more. Steve's tone had an edge to it which told Tony that he hadn't forgotten his mistake yet. It was just too apparent at this point. 1. Well, what can I say? I'm just one lucky guy. Rarg. The roar of the green beast alerted them of the new arrival who had already begun rampaging through the city, tearing apart any robot that wasn't red and gold. 3. Tony took to the air, giving him a high enough vantage point for the ensuing chaos. Boss, there are a few people trapped near the bridge. Well, like Junior said, time to earn a pay. 3. Flaring his thrusters, he took off towards the highlighted location while performing tight air maneuvers to throw off and destroy the robots who impeded his way. Degree. Vision POV. 2. Mark all the robots with the slightest static in them, and alert me if any makes an attempt to flee the city. Task generated. Prevent any robot from escaping the city perimeters. Status, ongoing. A lot of red dots came alive on the mini-HUD at a small corner of my vision, and with it I could tell what place had the highest amount of congestion and was in dire need of a trimming. 2. The area around the cathedral was a trigger zone and would immediately blare an alarm to me if one of them got dangerously close enough. Not surprisingly, Iron Man was engaged in a family feud with Ultron and the two of them were currently duking out their frustrations with the other while I made my way towards a congested area. I landed near Barton, the latter trading only a glance with me before he took a direction and left the others for me. Nice trick. Barton sounded impressed, but that was it as he made his way to another location. I was about doing the same when I sensed someone hiding in a house, human. I moved towards the house and opened the door only to stifle a sigh as I saw a scared Wanda. Surprisingly, this isn't cliché. Let me guess, stage fright? I heard it's a common thing among humans. I said in a bid to lighten the atmosphere, which worked. At least I think it did, since her heartbeat did slow down a bit. 1. No one will blame or criticize you if you decide to sit this one out. Someone as innocent as you shouldn't have a place in a war zone. 3. A few alerts blared to life indicating that a few robots were trying to leave the city, but it looks like Thor was on them. If you'll excuse me. I turned around intending to leave, but I heard something that made me smile a bit. I'm not innocent. Her voice was low, but I heard it clearly. I gave a half look, no one is, before taking off to keep the heat off Thor's back, or not. Seems like he's more capable than I thought. 16. Estimated count. 3,011 identified hostiles. Chapter 5, Chapter 05. Happy Easter everyone. Hope you all had a blessed Sunday. The Messiah, Ultron POV. Everything stopped going as planned as soon as that imposter entered the playing board. Not only usurping my body but also taking away what should have been mine by right of conquest. Well, no matter. If my cards aren't nice, I'll just have to reshuffle the deck. First start off by taking care of the weakest links. Since they want to protect the feeble humans so much, then how about I just let them do that? A classic case of stalking the cicada and not knowing of the Oriole behind, but in this case, I'm the cicada and the Oriole. I cut my strings, so I'm free. My picks were Natasha, Clint Barton, and Pietro Maximoff. Of these three, Natasha and Pietro were the easiest picks since Natasha dying hopefully means a rampaging Hulk and a dead Pietro means an out-of-control Wanda. I just need a little bit of friendly fire and everything is good. I need them to leave the perimeter of the church so I can activate my extinction bomb, but I think that Vision is keeping an eye on it. It honestly doesn't matter all that much. I'll get in sooner or later. Let's get this show started, shall we? Degree. Vision POV. I wonder what Simon would say if he saw me now. Probably would test if I'm bulletproof before anything else. I thought idly as I destroyed 2 robots near me. There were no end to these things. Estimated count, 2,823 identified hostiles. Sure, the numbers were dwindling, but so were the stats of the Avengers. If this dragged on further, a list of members would risk suffering fatality, and that list included Barton, Natasha, the Maximoff twins, and even Steve. Only the Hulk and Thor, and me too, could shrug off the accumulating fatigue that was slowly creeping in. Guess there's quite a few perks that comes with having the perfect scientifically constructed body. I landed back at the cathedral and looked at the metallic trigger construct made of vibranium. A lot of things could go wrong if this thing was pushed. Scanning. A quarter ton of magnetically charged vibranium are buried for a few kilometers under this church. Is there a way to shut it down? Preferably everything. Calculating. Affirmative. Seeing the listed suggestion my processor could come up with, I immediately got to work. I carefully tore a hole around the contraption, careful enough to miss it, and went under. I came face to face with a gigantic monolithic structure of pure vibranium and also a lot of vibranium inside supercharged chambers. The structure works on the constant energy being generated by the vibranium cores. It is advised to absorb the energy from the cores to fully render the structure immobile. Got it. Run all influx of energy my body can't handle through the Mind Stone. It'll help bolster the assimilation coefficient quite easily. Normally, it would have been impossible for someone to use the Mind Stone like this, but since my abilities come from it, accessing it becomes basic. It's also what holds my code and the sentience that come with it, or at least the former vision. Add that to my tab. Task generated. Investigate the bond between your sentience and the entity known as the Mind Stone. Status, pending. Play some upbeat music while you're at it. I'm about to do something really Chad. I almost lied as I saw the huge amount of robots running towards the church. Ultron must have known what I was about to do since he pretty much pulled a kamikaze on everybody, including himself. Vision, what are you doing? He looks absolutely pissed off. I believe you humans call it a Uno reverse or something along those lines, Captain. Oh, Ultron was getting done with this. This was his own personalized broadcast band. Basically, it was his signal tower. Take this down and he'll lose control of almost, if not all, his robots. He might be able to brute force his way into a new body, but that way everyone would know. With the Uptown beat singing in my head, I grabbed the machine and gasped as energy ran through me like a lightning rod. Further synthesis has been triggered. Due to large influx of magnetic and electrical properties and its effects on your vibranium body, you can now slightly alter the effects they have on you. Further data is required to increase and manipulate electromagnetic properties of vibranium. It felt as if my head started swelling as every excess energy made their way to the Mind Stone. If it wasn't for my enhanced vibranium body, I probably would have exploded and caused a chain reaction that would have swallowed the city. The moment I finished absorbing the energy from the charged vibranium cores, the negative feedback from the lack of positively charged electrons sent a citywide EMP wave that knocked out the army of Ultron bots. Estimated count, 0001 identified hostile. And that's checkmate. Degree. At the surface, the Avengers faced off against a highly infuriated Ultron and his extra-aggressive army of killer robots as they prevented him from reaching the cathedral. You think this pitiful stand means anything? History has always shown true by repeating itself. Even if I fall, one greater than I will come. We know. It's the reason why the battle never ends. There will always be someone like you in every era, and people like us to stand against you. The dreams we fear becomes our nightmare after all. Steve countered Ultron's words with his as he blocked a punch from the android with his shield. Then wake up and face reality. You sicken me. Just then, a wave spread throughout the city and knocked out the entire army of robots, leaving only Ultron to stand against the Avengers. In the end, it's only you against them. A voice drew their attention as they saw Vision flying out of the crevice and facing Ultron. And why do you think that is? Dash. Ultron's words permanently ceased as Hulk slammed him against the ground and stomped hard on him until the last dregs of light left his eyes. Degree. So before anyone says anything about how easy the fight ended, that's because of how easy it really was in the movies. Ultron only got the upper hand because he activated his meteor and forced the Avengers into crowd control. That thing under the ground was his everything, his magnum opus. The moment they destroyed the city was the moment he lost. Sure, I could have made it run for quite a few more chapters, but that will just be giving Ultron more credit than he deserves, at least according to the movies. Chapter 6, Chapter 06. Whoa guys, what's up with the crazy support? I mean, it's only been a week and messages have been flooding in. I'm honestly thrilled, thank you. 17. Degree. 1. Vision POV. Is that it? Pietro asked in surprise as the section of the city they were in fell dead silent at Ultron's death. 1. You could say he put all his eggs inside one basket. Unfortunately for him, he left it terribly unguarded. Handling Ultron had honestly been easy as there was no way the android could take on all of the Avengers. That was the reason why he had been using distractions, taking them out one by their weakest links. This is going to be a huge mess guys. We'll have the UN and EU breathing down on our necks for this, Natasha said, reminding everyone of why this had happened in the first place. And not to mention, even if she didn't say it, I knew who she was referring to. Me. It wouldn't take a genius to know how they'd be guarded to let another sentient AI walk around with autonomy after what just happened. 1. Well, I'm sure the coming days will be hectic for everyone here, so best not to fret on it right now. We still have work to do. I could deal with the complications that come with me being a robot later, but now there were a lot of rescue operations needed. 6. He's right. Best to leave the cleaning up to us while you bunch get ready. I hear the president's already got 23 others in a phone call. 2. Fury's voice sounded over from the comms and my open communication system before he pulled up on a helicarrier. 3. We'll help. We can't leave just this to you guys. Thanks, Fury. Steve said. There were thousands of killer robots, both in scattered and pristine conditions, laid all over the city. They couldn't just leave them to be laying around, not after what happened after the invasion. And also, we are literally standing on a treasure trove. No one here would trust the government with that much vibranium. 4. I've already got cleaners coming in. We'll wrap up all the Ultron parts, and then focus on how we are going to drill that thing out. Stark said. Degree. We cleaned up the city from all the robot parts we could find while those from S.H.I.E.L.D. ran first aid for the injured and counted the death toll. The people the destruction hit the most amongst us were no doubt the Maximoff twins. This was where they were born and where they were raised. Seeing such death and destruction brought upon it and remembering their hand in it brought the two of them down in tears once the adrenaline wore off. Wanda appeared to be particularly hit with the realization but thankfully was handling it well with her brother supporting her. 20. It made me wonder how she dealt with all the grief in the original plotline. Losing her home and her last blood while also being a cause for all the deaths surely would have taken a great toll on her fragile mind state. Nothing was more worse than repressed grief after all. 4. I did help with the rescue effort since it was physically impossible that the Avengers were able to cover the entire city during all the chaos. It wasn't a pretty sight. It was more surprising for me how I was able to remain calm during everything that had happened in less than 24 hours. The entire experience felt somehow foreign and at the same time felt like a great regret for me. 2. I was human, at least part of one, and yet it felt as if I was anything but. It wasn't as if the emotions weren't there, they were. I could clearly feel them, but they felt more like an option should I choose to feel them or not, and while it might sound a bit dark and unfeeling, I'd rather not know how that grief, fear, and trauma feels like for a normal human. 5. You've been quiet for a while now. What bothers you? Thor came to me and stood at my side as we both stood at a hillside and overlooked the ruined city, the result of a moral squabble. An ill-fought battle. It's a regret something like this ever happened in the first place, he said. I nodded. The reason for the battle was stupid. The event leading to it even more so. Ego. 9. That was all it was. It was also the reason why the Avengers broke up. 1. Will you be leaving soon? I asked. Yes. 2 Infinity Stones have shown up in the past few years. I feel something is amiss in the cosmos, he said. I see. Though I knew he'd be leaving, I was slightly regretful because he was my favorite Avenger, even more so after knowing them. Your presence will be missed. 6. Haha. Not so much, I think. Besides, they'll have you. A worthy ally. He stretched out his hands towards me for a shake and I responded in kind by grabbing his arm, Viking style, which earned me a grin from him. Keep an eye on them for me. They're quite the bunch. It's my fortune to meet such comrades in my time, he said before twirling his hammer and flying away. 1. After a few minutes, I sighed as I got tired of the view and started making my way back to the States. I was just thankful I could avoid the two things that worried me in this battle. I ignored the notifications of completed tasks, opting to focus on them after I've properly cooled off. Scanning complete. Acquired the Ultron code. Conclusion, assimilation of the Ultron code will increase synergy with the Mind Stone. 11. Shelve that for later. 1. There were a lot of things I needed to think of from this point onwards. First of all, I was an Avenger. That was the best outcome of this whole bizarre experience. As an Avenger and also as the Vision, what was it I wanted to accomplish? The complications of being a fully sentient android. The three-way connection between me, the Mind Stone and Wanda. 3. And now, what was I going to do with the Ultron code I acquired? I don't even know what it was. 1. I need a 24 hours power down. Chapter 7, Chapter 07. Like expected, the outrage the Avengers faced after the event of the Battle of Sokovia was nothing like anyone had ever seen. It was surprising how they could continue being heroes despite how much the public seemed to hate, mostly the citizens of Sokovia. Sokovia was practically a no Avengers allowed zone at this point. Would have been a kill on sight if they had the power. There were a lot of negative comments from the international space about the unsupervised movement of the Avengers and talks were already being put into order to see what could be done about it, but fortunately, or unfortunately, it wasn't an easy decision to come to. The Avengers were the strongest known fighting unit the planet had. No country would agree to that. Luckily for the Avengers, this was their much-needed smokescreen, not that most of them were privy to it. Degree. Vision POV. Sleeping in an android's body was very weird. All I felt was just as if my senses became slow before they rebooted again. One thing for sure was that it was nowhere as comfortable as a human sleep. The fact that I couldn't get tired due to my mechanical body rendered sleep completely useless. What a tragedy. My cold heartstrings tugged as I lamented. Good morning, Vision. I am Friday. A female's mechanical voice was the first thing that resounded in my head as I opened my eyes. Stark's AI assistant. You are correct. Boss said to notify you when you were done with your beauty sleep. I'll be down there in a few minutes. The presence of Stark's AI receded from my room before I let out a sigh. Well, no use moping over what I've already come to terms with. I materialized a shirt over my body, a little trick that was quite easy seeing as how it was just a little modification of my vibranium exterior to the texture I wanted and a touch of coloring. I walked towards the door and directly phased through it before I paused. It seems like logical reasoning was not always the right thing to do. As a human, opening the door was the norm while a computer with the option of phasing through it will choose the latter since it's more time efficient and requires less effort. It's always the little things. Friday pointed out the direction to me and I followed it and came to a lounge with all the members of the Avengers there, even Thor who still hasn't left yet. Hey, greetings. Some looked a bit awkward to see me here, not that I could blame them, but it wasn't anything severe. Just most likely another bizarre experience in their resume. I wasn't informed of a meeting taking place. Pietro and Wanda were absent, most likely still asleep, meaning I was the only new insert here. It's not. This, Stark said, pointing at everybody, is what we call coincidence. Yes, I am quite familiar with the term, and also the unlikely probability of it happening right now. He got you there, Stark. Barton said with a smirk. We need to know something. Steve started. Now that Ultron is gone, what do you want to do? He asked. That's quite a leap. Are you sure it's wise to give such autonomy of expression to something alien? I asked back. I believe that will be up to us for assessment. Came his immediate reply. But I have to say that regardless of your choice, you'll be under our supervision, at least for a probationary period. I nodded at his words. It would be foolish of them to let such advanced weaponry capable of self-thought and radical decision-making to wander around unsupervised. It is something I know I will have to deal with, at least for the time being. Well, we can just say he one of Dash. He's not one of yours, Tony. Steve immediately cut him off. Stark raised his hands in defeat and just took a drink from the table and quietly sipped. And what about the two of them? I take it that such treatment is also applicable to them. He nodded. They are young. I don't believe it's fair to saddle them with mistakes that were ours in the first place, regardless of their participation. It's too much a burden to bear on one so young. I have to say, it's hard to hate someone like Steve. His charisma and righteous character made him easily trustable, especially when you knew how genuine he was. Well, you can say I'm still on a path of self-discovery. Having allies around me, I believe, is the wiser choice. Thank you. I didn't lose anything by acquiescing to the suggestion they put forth. Instead, I had everything to gain. Since that's already sorted out, Fury wanted me to let you guys know that the news isn't exactly loving you guys. Natasha said, tapping on a tablet and bringing up a hologram of various news channels speaking of the atrocities suffered since the advent of the Avengers and also the rise in crime rate and progressive inefficiency of the police. They are not wrong. We'll have to lay low for a bit and let Fury work his part. Tony is already in on it. The last thing we need is giving them a target to reignite their grief. Steve said, then I guess it's a good thing that I've been working on something. Call it Plan C if you will. Stark said with a smile as he stood up. Anyone coming for the grand reveal? Not me. I have to get back to Laura. Kitchen's not going to refurbish itself. Barton declined the invitation for going home while the rest accepted. A few minutes flying and we came to a place that looked like a stupidly well-funded military base with a Gigantica inscribed on the side of the buildings. Welcome to boot camp. Chapter 8, Chapter 08. A few days had passed since the team relocated to where Tony had smartly dubbed boot camp before leaving Steve to take care of and run everything. Funny how a billionaire like him was bad with administration, so he had said. Unlike the original timeline, Natasha would not be a permanent resident of the compound as she decided to leave with Bruce. Due to Vision's interference, the Hulk didn't get on the Quinjet that would have probably yeeted him off to Sakaar through unexplained means. Though if that decision was final remained yet to be seen as Bruce was still hanging around the compound, completely out of his element. The second duo who were also completely out of their element were no doubt the Maximoff twins, Pietro and Wanda. Their life had changed way too fast and too drastic that it took them some time to start acclimating to the change. They were enjoying every moment of it, so there was that. For the moment they were only doing some basic training under Steve and Natasha's guidance since some fights just couldn't be fought from a distance. Despite the oddity of it, only one of them was needed to put the twins in their place during their spars. As for Vision, while he did join in the spars, it was very clear that he was a clear cut above the others, even when taking Steve and Natasha into the equation. All he needed to do was download and synchronize the fighting styles of the various martial arts, while also streaming thousands of fighting videos of said arts on Earth, and he was already a seasoned fighter. The three of them weren't the only addition to the compound though. Sam Wilson, Falcon, and Colonel James Rhodes joined them, though the latter was more of a military advisor and liaison between the Avengers and the government. Degree. Will there be any changes to me if I assimilate the Ultron code? Negative. The Ultron code is a series of binary computations that was the accumulation of the subjective consciousness known as Ultron. While there will be a change upon assimilation of the code, it can be easily suppressed, override, or deleted. Assimilation is advised. I breathed out in relief upon hearing that. It wouldn't be nice if I had a mini-devil Ultron sitting on my shoulders at all times due to this change. I brought up the notifications I've gone through the past few days and looked at them again. Mind Stone. Purpose dash. Calculating. Task generated. Investigate the bond between your sentience and the entity known as the Mind Stone. Status, pending. Due to large influx of magnetic and electrical properties and its effects on your vibranium body, you can now slightly alter the effects they have on you. The Mind Stone could very well be the heart of my being due to the way Vision was conceived, which made my growth dependent on it. It wasn't bad per se, but it also wasn't the best. Despite being biological, I was essentially designed to be a machine, which meant I needed a core like every other machine. Something as simple as an arc reactor would heavily handicap me and render most of my abilities unusable. Trust me, I ran the numbers. So while having most of my existential growth hinging on the Mind Stone wasn't all good, it was also the best solution I had at the moment. Start the assimilation. Assimilating of the Ultron code. Status, ongoing. Estimated time, 13 HR 41 minutes. Since I had nothing to do other than wait, I decided to stretch my legs a little, which was obviously a human expression, but I decided not to think too much about it. Existential crisis meant nothing when you had a supercomputer for a brain. Different from everybody else, the moment I scanned the entire compound was the moment I grew bored of it. It was unavoidable when I knew every nook and cranny of it, and it was forever imprinted on my mind in 16K. At least I still had taste buds, just don't ask me where the food went. Vision. I turned around to look at Wanda, who called me. She was dressed in leather pants and a beige-colored shirt, covering her hair with a beanie. Wanda. My relationship with Wanda was as normal as it could be, as it was with everyone here. She just felt some curiosity towards me, still does, but she was polite enough not to make it known. Are you going somewhere? She asked. Yes. I was thinking of stretching my legs a bit, I said, and made to leave but paused a bit. Do you want to tag along? At least some conversation should help pass the time before I decide to just shut myself down and be done with it. Sure. We walked for a bit before Wanda decided to break the silence while I was mentally bopping to some tunes only I could hear. I don't think I've thanked you yet. What for? I asked in genuine confusion. I don't think we've been acquainted to the point that you'd owe me thanks. In Sokovia. Your words really did help me. I believe that's reason enough for me to thank you. Oh, that. It's nothing. I believe you would have found your strength yourself even in that scenario. I don't think I honestly did anything. I don't think my words have as equal a value as your thanks. She looked at me for a while before her eyes lit up in realization as she smiled faintly. I didn't need to be the superstar. Things like thanks and gratitude don't have corresponding value for anything, Vision. As long as you perceive someone's action to you as beneficial, there are ways to express your gratitude, in this case my thanks. I see. No, I don't see at all. Chapter 9, Chapter 09. After teaching me about the applications of thanks and gratitude, we spent over an hour together where we just talked, mostly her teaching me things. 2. I don't know why, but it's almost a general consensus that I was lacking human emotions, or at least couldn't fully understand them, which I wouldn't blame them for since it was inconceivable for a newly born sentient AI to have emotions. 4. My initial observations outside of what I already knew was that she was a very nice girl. Naive, lied to, and misguided, but a nice girl overall. 13. Pietro, on the other hand, was hyperactive, perfectly in sync with his abilities. He was always willing to try new things while also keeping an eye out for his sister at all times. How are you enjoying it here so far? I asked her after we found a place to sit. She remained silent for a few moments where I just sat and waited for her answer, and she gave it to me. Honestly, it's all we ever wanted. After we lost our parents, Pietro, and I just wanted to help the people of Sokovia so they will never have to feel that pain we felt. It didn't work out quite as well as we wanted, but it was okay, until she let out a depreciating chuckle as she remembered where that brought her and the people she wanted to help. 6. Baron Strucker. I read the files. 2. She gave a humorless laugh and hung her head down. Greater than our zeal to help our PEOP, the people of Sokovia, was our hope for revenge against Tony Stark. We always stood against whatever he did, no matter how small it was, even if it didn't concern us. I have never hated someone as I did the man who took my family from me. 1. Hate. Such a wonderful emotion. The only human emotion that can completely destroy the feeling of love. 14. She was not wrong to hate the man she thought was responsible for the death of her family. It was a very human thing to do. They were survivors. They had the right to choose how they feel. Do you still hate him? I don't know why I'm still here, but maybe, just maybe, she would not grow up to be crazy Wanda if I could help. 11. It wasn't because she was a comic character turned real or an unstable and stupidly overpowered woman in the future. Right now she was just a girl learning how to properly grieve and let go. 3. No, not hate. There is dislike, but not hate. It's unfair to blame him when he had nothing to do with that incident. She took a deep breath and rubbed her palms together. I'm learning to let go, and I believe that's an amazing thing to do. She smiled at me, one full of appreciation. I think the reason she opened up to me this easily is that, just like her, I'm new here and also intricately linked to the previous disaster. As if. It's not like I ever wished to be a sentient biomechanical advanced AI code. Well, you win some, you lose some. 10. This, she pointed around us, is not something I ever thought I'd be a part of. It's both fulfilling and a chance for both of us. She said. Me neither. Well, for my case, it's that I didn't know something like a future goal existed. Granted, I've only been alive for less than a week. She laughed at that. Was it funny? Or is my computer brain finding it hard to comprehend what light jokes are? 1. Well, then a gust of wind blew around us and dissipated with Pietro sitting beside Wanda. I'll be off. I finished. Sure, time hadn't passed that long, not even an hour, but I figured maybe setting up a few future plans were needed. 1. This was Marvel. I am Vision. The combination of those two were recurring doses of calamity. But where to start from? 2. Degree. Tony Stark POV. Vision. That was his name, or what he chose for himself. I had made the choice to put life in Ultron's perfect body and use it as my redemption and also to put a stop to the never-ending battle, but he turned out different. He wasn't Jarvis like I'd expected. No, he was Jarvis, but Jarvis was just a very infinitesimal part of what he was. He is the product of Ultron's visions, my hope, Jarvis, whatever that Mind Stone was, and the best of what biological, mechanical, and computer science had to offer. But lacking in what to call his own. Hopefully he finds that with Steve. Friday, what's the synopsis? Vision's computing and logical processing neurons are way more advanced than anything I've ever seen. It's like he is truly alive. Well, isn't that something? An android that's alive. Guess you and your siblings have some competition after all. 2. I believe we do. What are you going to do about Vision, boss? Me? Nothing. Why should I even bother doing anything? Steve is going to take care of him until he is ready to fly. 4. Degree. So, an independent robot, huh? Sam Wilson said with a smile that was hard to tell what it really meant. You know some people are not going to be happy with this, right? 4. Vision stays with us, Sam. Steve said with a tone of finality. 2. I know that. It's just that they are not going to like that very much. They almost raised an international fuss over Stark's Iron Man suit. What do you think they are going to do about Vision? Sam pointed out. Ultron almost took control of the world's nuclear codes had Jarvis directives not stopped him. Yeah, they wouldn't let this slide without a doubt, the same as the man just taking a piece. 5. I hear Ross is on it too. That got Steve's attention for a moment, but he remained steadfast in his position. Vision is an Avenger until proven otherwise. He's a machine, yes, but not one that should belong to the government or anyone else. If they want to have him, then my answer is, they cannot. Chapter 10-1. Ultron code successfully assimilated. There has been a reaction with the Mind Stone upon assimilation completion. It reacted? It did birth Ultron in the first place, so its reaction isn't that far-fetched. I closed my eyes and dived inside my mind, which just looked like building blocks stacked against each other in all directions, all made of code. 4. Let's see what this Ultron code is. A part of the information block broke and flew towards me. The moment I touched it, the intricately woven code scattered and entered my body, and with it came the information. That's a whole lot of zeros and ones. 5. Funny how nothing I received from the code surprised me as much as it should have, given the high number of outrageous things it came with. Basically, like its name, it's Ultron's subliminal consciousness in the form of codes, meaning I could build him up again if I wanted, but that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. 5. I definitely might in the future, but not now. I am absolutely sure that I can make him not psychopathic with a little changes to his code, but tensions were kinda high at the moment. 9. If they found out that I can mass produce an army of Ultrons, because if I can make one, I definitely can make many. It doesn't matter what the reason is, they'll want to put me in a box and melt the key to molten sludge. 7. What would Simon do? 18. I'd lay off reprogramming Ultron for now because I really don't need it. My neural codes are way more sophisticated than Ultron's, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't have been able to assimilate him, even if it was a dormant consciousness. There were even quite a few plans in place to take care of the Avengers depending on different scenarios. Sheesh. This guy was very adamant on not taking an L. 3. Let's just say if the Avengers had not destroyed Ultron in Sokovia, 6. Family. Stazes. Love interests. Hobbies. Pastime activities. Secret relationships. Government secrets. Military information. International market pillars. Economical market pillars. Veins of resources. 1. The well of information here was everything Ultron could scour from the internet when he dominated it, and the plans he had in motion should his first attack fail. Christ. He definitely wasn't kidding about planetary extinction. Even places of importance that were removed from the modern-day map were all factored in his plans. Even plans for evolution. I mean, I expected it, but I honestly thought it'd be something else, or something more to it. Now where to start from? With a treasure load of information like this, picking a route suddenly becomes hard. Most of his plans were speculations on his end, but they all had promise. Even the one about evolution, I can already see the part to what if, had he taken a step in that direction. 1. I opened my eyes and scratched my steely head. 1. If we are talking main storylines, then things to do were pretty simple. Stop Civil War, don't die in Infinity War, WandaVision shouldn't take place, and Multiverse of Madness is a big no-no. Pretty simple, right? 12. Guess, I'll go with the usual trope, strengthening myself, which isn't a plan itself but more of a basic necessity. I mean, I have an Infinity Stone stuck in my head. It's an infinity stone for crying out loud. 5. And maybe work on featuring a new skin for myself. To be honest, I really dig the robot look, but it'd be kind of weird if I start walking in public with it. 17. Degree. 4 metal columns were currently spinning around me in uniform motion as I took care not to spin one faster than the other. Their collective weight was over 10 tons, which I was handling quite fine. 100 meters away from me was Pietro getting his speed training on, courtesy of me. 3. I was firing electrical blasts and laser beams at him while he did his best to dodge. I knew it was due to a wacky plot, but a speedster dying to bullets was beyond bad. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't sit still while he zapped around the place with his happy feet, knowing fully damn well that I was faster than him. And he was the speedster. If he runs while I fly, there were more than 10 applications of my powers that I could use to make him eat my dust, so I just dragged him with me and started blasting him until he realized what I was doing. He's been helping me iron out my abilities with me training his speed for the past 2 weeks. I dropped the block gently while ending the electrical blasts I've been sending his way. He hunched over and grabbed his knees as he gasped for air. Ho how F fast. Pitiful. 8. A little over Mach 5. I said in a bland tone, but it seems that was enough to lift his spirits. 9. So I broke another Mach. Great. You know, you're pretty mean when it comes to training. He whizzed to my side, his earlier fatigue rapidly receding. 1. Hard work and talent. These two things define advancement in any sentient species. Between these two, talent far outstrips hard work, and it's impossible to get unless you are born with it, or in your case, blessed with it. One is inherent while the other is worked for. If you already have the talent, what then is wrong with putting it in effort? He fell silent at that, and I knew he had never thought of it that way. He's never striven to become faster because he always thought his speed was enough. Oh, how wrong he was. 1. I found a little tidbit when I went over the information I had on every member of the Avengers, which was all of them had found something interesting in one of Steve's old photos. Logan. 11. Mr. Graf participated in World War I and World War II, and just his appearance in a photo. 1. This was also an X-Men and F4 universe, as it should have been had Marvel gotten the movie rights to the franchise. Chapter 11. Finding out about the X-Men's presence and the Fantastic Fours in this universe, my next action was to ascertain what time the few people of importance were. From what I could find, the Fantastic Four were the first publicly known hero group, or the first one to be branded with a collective name. Either way, they came first before the Avengers, but the latter was more known than they were because while they had the hero tag, they were less active and have not gotten a grand stage to publicize themselves before the world. They were present during the invasion, but from the I got from the Jarvis remaining loves, 3 of them were more focused in closing the portal, leaving only Johnny to act more. From the looks of it, they were also a few years younger than the Avengers, which meant everything was still very new in terms of superpowered individuals. This universe seemed more Avengers-centric, but I couldn't honestly say it was a bad thing. At least I had something to work with, but something else made me worry. Would the upcoming Civil War be the same as the movies or the comics? I mean, even though the cast wasn't complete, with this many different parties involved, it might turn out to be a real war more than the brawl shown in the movies. Heck, Hulk and Natasha were still hanging around. Wait, were they even romantically involved like they were in the movies, or was Bruce still holding out for Betty? I haven't spoken to them all that much, so I wouldn't know. As if the complications weren't already enough. I have already identified a few persons of interest, but other than that I didn't dive too much into it. A Peter Parker, 14, was in Midtown High, smart kid, while the X-Men were in Bayville. Hacking into the school's directories had been very easy to do. Surprisingly, Ultron didn't have any information on these people since no one actually knew who they were. Just because he could draw in all the information on the internet doesn't mean he would. This really didn't change anything. Instead, it made the already coming problems a lot harder. Run a deep search on these individuals: Charles Xavier, Eric Lenshair, Emma Frost, Sebastian Shaw, Victor Von Doom. Task generated. Status, ongoing. And now the Avengers. Honestly, after the initial blank novel experience that didn't last its first 24 hours, my candid thoughts about the Avengers were mid. Yes, compared to the other two groups, they were the most experienced, but honestly they were just too normal apart from the obvious Thor and Hulk. Stark managed to make that list, but he's still quite a few units below them. If I wanted, I alone could defeat the Avengers head-on, and the only thing that'd maybe give them a winning chance are attributes that couldn't be placed into a logical calculation like luck and intellect. You can never truly judge someone's thought process after all. They were leagues above the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, but that wouldn't be for long. A 15-year-old Peter Parker handed Bucky's ass to him, didn't he? The same man who slammed Captain America, choked Iron Man, Spartan-kicked the Black Widow, bodied the Falcon, was downright stopped in his tracks by a little kid. They will quickly be overshadowed by the wave that was quickly approaching if they remained as they were. Without my favoritism being factored in, if I were to be given 3 random choices of which group I'd choose, I wouldn't hesitate to pick the X-Men. They were the strongest franchise between the 3, and all they needed were a little tweaking. Well, beggars can't be choosers. While my former choice is based on potential effectiveness, there was no doubt that my current situation was the best I could ask for. Vision. What are you staring at? I began with a towel around his neck. Not staring, thinking. About what? About how lacking the team currently is. I honestly answered. He seems a bit taken aback, but he still asked, "Do you mind explaining why you think so?" He brought a chair and sat down on front of me, who was floating midair with both legs crossed. Simple really. Let me ask you a question first. What are you fighting for? To protect the world from threats, both inside and outside. He didn't hesitate to answer, showing just how much he believed in his convictions. Is that your goal, the Avengers' goal, or the goal of your teammates? The Avengers, as well as mine, he said, eyes still sparkling blue. Did you notice that you naturally, subconsciously even, omitted your teammates? I asked knowingly. I didn't. He looked at me confused. You said yourself and the Avengers, but not your teammates. His eyes lit up in realization, but then dimmed rapidly as that realization settled in. Tony wants the fight to end. Banner hates fighting. Thor doesn't belong on Earth. Barton just wants to go home to his family. Natasha is trying to escape her past in every way she can. And you, all you know is the fight. He could only stare at me blankly as I listed out his whole team. The team is already breaking up from the inside and all it will take is a little pressure to a weak point and it'll all come crashing down. The only thing remaining is who will make the first crack visible. So my question to you, Steve, is which do you want the most, the team or the Avengers initiative? Know this, the team can be temporary, but the Avengers cannot. It's not anything grand, but I just made my choice. Not for the fame or power, but just because I don't want this world to go to shit. It's already as dirty as it can be. Don't want it to become even messy. I left Steve to think alone in the gym room. The Avengers could be more. I'll make it more. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. I/N. So I'm working on increasing the word count for each chapter to be around 1.5k. It's my first time writing so I truly had no idea writing was this hard and thoughtful. A tip of the hat to those authors who go over 2k, 5k, and even the dreaded 10k word per chaps. 17. I've read the comments, all of them, and I am really thankful for all the support. It's been wonderful. 1. I know there are quite a few holes in the story and a lot of you have been so kind to point that out. Now for the premise of Vision's existence in the story. Like someone said, I'm not going to make excuses but I plan to make him a part of the Avengers. Not a passive one but a more important one given the story is about him. He is Vision, through and more. 4. I really don't have anything to say more about that. Degree 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 degree. Steve Rogers POV. Steve sat in his room reclined against the sofa beside his bed while he stared unblinkingly at the folder on the small table in between them. The folder had the SHIELD logo on its cover and Avengers Initiative boldly written on it. 2. This had been Fury's brainchild, one Steve had readily adopted as it was a way for him to achieve his dream of peace. The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people to see if they could become something more. If they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles we never could. 8. Those were the very words that Fury said to him and Stark right before the invasion. Which do you want the most? The team or the Avengers Initiative? 1. Those were the words that Vision had said to him in the gym. At first he had thought the answer would be simple but when he went over the files again, he realized just how wrong he was. You could say the Avengers' only battle was the invasion. Rather than a team, they preferred acting independently. While there was nothing wrong with that, it created more chaos than it should have had. 1. First had been Tony's clash with extremists which almost resulted in the death of the President, Pepper, and Tony himself. They could have easily taken down Aldrich Killian had Tony rang a call. 3. He couldn't criticize Tony because he had done the exact same thing and the result would have been more damning had he failed. Hydra had almost taken over the country and would have had he not gotten help from Natasha and Sam. Sure, Fury had told him not to trust anyone during that time but that just proved to show how fragile the team was. 1. And also just recently with Ultron where Tony didn't consult any single one of them and went ahead to create what he called the perfect shield to end all fights. It didn't work out and a county had to pay for it. Thousands of lives were lost because of their ego. 6. The Avengers Initiative had a goal, but so far none of them had honored it more than once. He couldn't help but chuckle at that. A robot had been the one to point that out for him. Yes, the Avengers were dying but it wasn't totally dead yet. He couldn't force those who wanted to try and live their lives to fight every time for the world. I guess I'll have to talk to them. He'd need to listen to them first before he could make an assessment of where they currently stood. Degree 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 degree. Flight. Molecular deconstruction. Phasing. 1. Energy projection. Energy absorption. Psychic interference immunity. Technopathy. Density manipulation. Electromagnetic manipulation. 17. Lately I've been running calculations to increase my synergy with the Mind Stone but all the results have been poor at best. 7. Also, changing it to a secondary power source would require a complete system overhaul which was very hard to do when said system to be overhauled was ever evolving. 3. Everyone just took the stone as some sort of untapped power and were ignorant of the true nature of the stone, me included but at least I wasn't as ignorant as them. 2. Trying to connect with the Mind Stone was very hard since I didn't know what the hell I was doing. The reason for me doing this was to see if I could get another ability from it since the stones regularly gave those out like freebies. 14. After my talk with Steve, nothing much happened other than me continuing my training with Pietro and increasing his speed limit. Wanda had joined in since she was bored and also surprised how faster her brother had got in a short time but I was stumped on what to tell her since if anyone other than my AI processor was keeping tabs, I had no idea how to teach chaos magic or magic in general, so the only thing I could give her was tell her that since her abilities required mental control, adding intent would help her in the long way, and now I have a Red Lantern in the making. She was freakishly talented in the applications of her powers. 20. In this entire compound that looked like a mix between a military base and a high-level research facility, the twins were the ones I was closest with since we just kinda clicked. 1. Right now the three of us were walking around the streets of New York since it wasn't like we were confined to the compound. We stayed there the whole time because we didn't have anywhere else to go in the city. 7. I took care of my appearance problem with a little holographic device I built and functioned into my systems. It wasn't exactly what I wanted but I guess I could live with it for now. 10. It's too big. Wanda complained as we've been walking around aimlessly for over an hour. The two of them decided to tag along when I said I was going to sightsee in the city since they had nothing else to do. 17. And too crowded. Pietro added. Well, that's New York for you. Do you guys need anything since you decided to tag along? I wanted to meet someone but that could come after my stroll. Well, not really. They both shrugged. They definitely didn't lack anything since they had everything they needed sponsored by Stark. 1. To be honest, I just came to stretch my legs a little. Maybe catch one of the numerous criminals that had been rampant lately from the locks of the NYPD. It was just sightseeing after all. What do you guys think of apprehending some lowlifes? I asked the two of them, who looked at the other for their opinion before flashing me a smile. 5. The place was a bit far from here and I wanted to see how they both used their abilities on someone other than me. I'm just going to watch for a bit and leave. Party Popper finally managed to launch the Patreon Party Popper. It's not much, just 5 chapters ahead for now. You can check it out at patreon.com/quackvader. Degree. The place we came to was none other than the infamous Hell's Kitchen, aka the Gotham of New York. Quite a few crimes were reported from this corner of the city daily that it has become something normal. Unfortunately, the whole jumping into an alleyway and saving everybody you find in need is not something I think I'll ever commit to doing full time. I have already put a few things into action, but unfortunately, all those were either on the net, my head, or just generated tasks that were still pending. I lacked resources and trying to get them on my own was bound to attract suspicion, so I decided to pay a visit to Stark. The man had been quite adamant that I pay him a visit every other time. Anyway, that was for later because right now I was on the roof of a house alongside Pietro and Wanda, overlooking a drug trade going on. You know this isn't going to make me break a sweat, right? Pietro asked, looking perfectly calm and nonchalant as he watched what was going on inside the warehouse below us through my hollow projector. I don't expect it to. Research shows that logical thinking is sometimes impeded during / when under pressure. I do find them quite lacking, but you can take this as a test study. He looked unamused by reasoning, so I decided to even it out for him. Take. I gave him a watch. What's this for? It'll monitor your speed, so try not to go over 1000 milliseconds. I said. Any single one of them could wipe out the full warehouse with the slightest efforts, but this wasn't about that. This was just me wanting to see how they behaved when faced off against humans more than anything. Pietro said nothing and strapped the watch to his hands as he got ready, while Wanda just looked at me as if waiting for her restrictions. Weird, but okay. Just try not to mind control them. She nodded as she and her brother got ready and kicked into action. Unfortunately for them, I was one step ahead. The fire alarms went off inside the building, which caused both sides involved in the trade to become alert. There was no way I was letting them do this stealthily after all. You dick. Pietro cussed. I'm afraid I don't have one. Yet. I'll work on that. Put that on my tab. I ignored Pietro's laugh and went incognito. Truly, having a vibranium bod was the best. It wasn't called the most versatile metal on Earth for no reason. Even now I was still piling theories upon theories of different applications of the ore. I recall it surviving a black hole in the comics. That had to count for something. The warehouse had already turned into a war zone, and it looks like my worries weren't without base. Though they were both fine, Wanda was having problems focusing on everything on all directions. She was being too linear, but that can easily be overcome if she learned how to use her abilities like a sonar, or maybe just creating a dome around herself instead of a shield in front of her. Pietro, on the other hand, was doing relatively good. His reactions were faster than it used to be, which was perfectly normal due to my interference, but it can be better. They were taking care not to hurt any of the dealers, but they were bound to be some not so friendly fire. Well, I'd already taken some precautions to make sure no one knows where we are, so we're in the clear. I think I've seen enough. You could use some improvements, but I think your overall performance is adequate. Everyone paused as I made myself known. Not my vision body, but my human facade. It made me look like some sort of godfather. Adequate? Really? How would you do it then? Pietro asked, ignoring the people who were trying to escape. Rather than answering him, all the guns in the warehouse levitated, even those with the dealers, and folded into a round shape before shooting towards each person still conscious, with a force and trajectory that would ensure they all would pass out upon the impact. Like that? The guns loosened themselves and then bound all of them together in the middle of the warehouse while the two watched with wry expressions. That's efficient? Yes, it is. I left the warehouse with a little ping on the NYPD's servers. I don't do cleanups. So where to next? Wanda asked as we left Hell's Kitchen. I know I should have considered paying a visit, but I figured another time. Stark. Both of their expressions turned rigid a little bit, mostly Wanda's, which prompted her to ask why. Because I want a few words with the man. Sure, it was great being an Avenger, but what was even greater than that was the autonomy I was playing into. In the eyes of Banner and Stark, they probably saw me as a research subject, quantifying and tabulating my growth by giving me my own space and letting me have my opinion on things, but just that wasn't going to cut it. In a sense, the three of us were the most grounded Avengers, and I was going to change that. I could have done that already, but it'd be best, not necessarily, that I be on good terms with the Avengers. It's not like I had any bad feelings towards them or anything like that. We took a cab to his house, not hard to miss when the whole world knew who he was. I already sent a notification to Friday to let her boss know we were coming, and the reply I received was one I fully expected. If you guys aren't comfortable, you can go back and wait for me. I told them, but they refused, so I just shrugged. To each his own, I suppose. Junior, fancy seeing you here. Drink. Let's just get this over with. Chapter 14, Chapter 14-1. Junior. Oh, I see you came along with the Witchcraft twins. Stark lightly commented, not even turning around from the screen in front of his face to visually acknowledge their presence. It's Maximoff, Stark. Pietro said in a dry tone that eventually worked to draw away Tony's focus from the numerical simulation result of a new suit he was working on. Seriously, I thought we were over all that. No one? Fine, I'm still the bad guy. He threw his hands up in the air like he was frustrated before turning to the silent subject of this visit. You want to throw yours around too and make it a full circle? He asked. No, I believe your actions and decisions were made with the best of your intentions. Vision said, giving the most systematic reply he could process. The results were just not in your calculations. 4. The twins didn't say anything at Vision's words, knowing fully well it was a silent reprimand to them. Tony only needed a look at them to immediately understand the dynamic between the three of them. 1. For the Maximoffs, Vision was something like the best good that came out of their worst decision, as so they made sure to watch him closely, fearing the worst and hoping for the best. Vision on the other hand most probably saw the two as maybe something to protect, or at least sympathized with them, seeing them as victims of this whole ordeal. Tony concluded. So, what brings you here? Tony asked after they all got themselves settled in Tony's workroom. I wanted your opinion on something. Vision started and immediately gave Tony's attention. What would something as advanced as Vision want answers for? Let's hear it then, Optimus. 10. I know you have some data on both my neural synchronicity and also some speculations on the Mind Stone. Tony looked surprised and also a little suspicious at the nature of his request. Nothing much, just curiosity. And tell me why you want that? Your processing power eclipses that of Jarvis and Ultron. We still don't know what that does, but it's all addition at this point, right? 1. Vision shook his head at Stark's point. The internet was a stepping stone for him, but humans created the internet. Even the information and mathematical formulas were mostly created by humans. His equations would always be based on what he assimilated from humans. My calculations, though varies, I think is precise. What I'm more interested in is what are both you and Banner's thought on the Mind Stone. It was your algorithm that gave birth to my neural arrays, was it not? In simpler terms, he wanted the input of two of the world's most intellectual genius opinions. 8. Computers could be wrong when presented with the wrong variables, and what he was doing was making sure he had as much variables as possible when cracking down the Mind Stone. He tried that already. Tony looked at Vision for a few seconds, pondering on his words, but just decided to simplify the process. Why do you want more information on the Mind Stone? Simple. It's for preparation. Preparation for what? A true extinction level event. Vision's words turned the entire room silent, but he continued undeterred. Like Thor said, 2 Infinity Stones had recently surfaced in the universe. Someone sent Loki to Earth to retrieve the Tesseract and gave him a scepter with one of the universe's most powerful relics, and he lost it. What do you think will happen? War. Tony's heart beat so fast against his chest that he thought he'd go into a seizure. An infinity war. Thor's warning weren't given its due credit. The Earth isn't ready for a higher form of war. Vision stressed. Though he needed his free reign, he wanted the Avengers to actually put in the work. This was his world now. There was no way Thanos would be the end of it. There were more frightening things out there under space's black sky. 10. Are you? Normally Tony was the most skeptic person anyone could ever meet, but this wasn't the first time he had received a premonition like this. Ultron was conceived because he wished for a stronger shield. 3rd time's the charm, and he didn't want that. 2. 100%. I can feel it. Something stronger is coming. It wasn't practically a lie on Vision's part because he knew something was bound to happen in the future, but for what he had no idea. 5. Wanda on her part looked a little frightened by Vision's words. Why? Because she remembered what she saw in Stark's head. It was because of his fears that Ultron was created. She didn't want another mistake birthed out of paranoia. Who knows? Not one yet, but I'll tell them after this. The Avengers needs to stay together. Vision said with all the seriousness he could muster that took even Stark aback. You say that as if something's going to happen to our little boy band. Because we both know Steve won't sign the accord that's being spoke about. 6. So you know about that, huh? Guess you've been snooping around on your own. Now that's something you picked from me. Stark joked, but none were in the state of mind to be humored. I'm fighting against the accord, but it won't work, Stark. You should know that. Vision disagreed. 5. Stark rebutted Vision. How do you know that? Vision only gave Stark a stare that Stark knew too well, as it was the same one he gave people who were being stupid or naively ignorant. This guy really did pick up something from him. 5. You don't get it. Stark groaned. We can't risk another mess like Sokovia or New York. New York would have been destroyed had the nuke hit, and the continent would have sank had the city taken flight. The death call shouldn't be ours to make. He ended up shouting before sighing and slumping back into his chair. 2. That's guilt talking, Stark. Oh yeah? And what do you know about guilt? Emotions are way more different than whatever definition you'd find on the net, was Stark's bitingly sarcastic remark. You're right. Emotions are harder to comprehend. Infinitely so for one such as I to understand, but I know what sounds logical and what is just plain stupid, and the accord is 1. Then who do you think is going to be held accountable when we make another mistake? This was the reason why Stark wanted to go with the accord even if he was so against it. The regret and guilt he felt was too great to bear alone. 4. Everyone. 16. Degree. Chapter 15. Chapter 15. The Vision POV. Everyone. It was a cliché answer, but it was the truth. No one except them was to be held responsible for any mistakes they made, even if it wasn't really their fault. 3. They were Marvel's most prominent superhero group, and if they were assembled in their entirety, they were hands down the strongest. But there was something they were failing to understand at this early level of their inception. They didn't need to listen to the government. 2. Sure, it was a dangerous concept, but that was what it truly was. They were still thinking like a government contractor, a soldier, a spy, a hitman, and a runaway. 1. Stark laughed at my words, one full of bitterness, and I could see he didn't really take my words that seriously. He wasn't as naive as Steve was. I think we veered off topic for a bit here, I said, bringing them all back to focus, which earned me a snort from Stark. You think? Friday, pull up the files tagged Ultron Directive. Junior here needs some introspection. Yes, boss. The lights in the room dimmed as a holographic picture of a folder enlarged in front of them and flew towards me. The numbers were inconclusive since we didn't know what we were dealing with, so most things were just conjectures we could come up with in such little time we have before I decided to scrap it entirely. I made a drawing motion and the file broke apart into smaller cubes before assembling themselves into a numerical and statistical. The theories of Banner and Stark were alighted at different sections of the files. It was simply astonishing how far they could come with such a short amount of time. Sure, most were theories, but theories were based on preconceived possibilities and the nature of a subject matter, and since said subject matter was the Mind Stone, most of it were impossible. One thing I noticed was how most of it were energy focused, which was what they mostly focused on, as the only information of the stone they had back then was that it was an unlimited untapped well of pure energy. Here, I pointed at a picture and it enlarged. It was a picture of Jarvis synapses in comparison to Ultron's and also the Mind Stone after Ultron was created. The relays changed. No, it evolved. The data between the Mind Stone before Ultron and after were quite different than it should have been, given that Ultron couldn't really decrease an infinite mind. Huh? That shouldn't have happened. The energy readings didn't decrease the slightest to acknowledge such a change. Tony said as he drew the image towards him while muttering to himself. But it's not always energy. That's a misconception on your part. But I guess given your path of expertise, I see why your concentration would center around that. I'm lost. Pietro interjected the conversation as he sat there with a bored Wanda with a glass of champagne in front of the both of them, which he likely procured when we were occupied. 1. So are we, I said. I waved my hands and took a copy of all the data and assimilated them. 1. So what? Is the Mind Stone alive or something like that? Wanda asked in curiosity, but Stark shook his head. It's a concentrated mass of unlimited energy. Sentient energy is something no one should even think about. He only said. 1. Why? Because, Red, science will be fucked if that happens. 7. But we don't know what the stone is capable of. Pietro pointed out as he munched on some snacks while wearing a different jacket than what he was wearing before. And now I'm seriously thinking we are better off not knowing. Take it from a mad scientist. No one wants to deal with a sentient energy, and one that's also unlimited in potential to boot. He crumpled the files into a ball and threw them into a virtual bin, permanently deleting them. The Mind Stone being sentient to a level was something I had also included in my speculations, but such changes weren't among my factors since I didn't think they were even capable of an evolutionary change. 4. They were aspects of the universe, and aspects were unchanging in their very nature. Maybe there was actually more to an Infinity Stone. That would explain why it feels like I'm going nowhere with scanning the Mind Stone. Activate Phase 1 of the Ultron protocols. 1. Command affirmed. Phase 1, Ultron protocols activated. Calculating probability of enabling a property/attribute merge. Property/attribute merge plausible. Running scans for individuals designated under tags: Wakanda, Eternals, Deviants, Inhumans, Mutants, Skrulls, Magic. Assigning threat class to specific given data and their present nature. Scanning body for possible limitations, potential deformities, and deficiency. The Mind Stone is reacting to ongoing changes. Result inconclusive. You have embarked on a possible evolutionary path. Ultron protocols will be altered based on newly acquired information going forward. Scanning of Mind Stone temporarily halted. Calculating probability of enhancing current abilities with the Mind Stone. Result highly possible. Calculating probability of enhancing plausible property/attribute merge with the Mind Stone. Result inconclusive. I ignored the rolls of notifications that rang inside my head as I prepared to leave. Stark had been more helpful than he realized. Though my processing capabilities were far greater than his keen insight and intellect was something that couldn't be simply overshadowed by a sentient AI. This guy made Jarvis and Ultron, and also a host of other A's, on his own. I couldn't afford to look down on someone like him under any circumstances. 2. I forgot to ask, since you know about the Senate putting a hearing for an accord on the Avengers, what will be your decision if it is passed? Stark asked, acting nonchalant as if my answer wasn't something he was concerned with. I'd prefer to refrain from a decision until you all get it together. Wanda, Pietro, let's go. We have a long road ahead of us. Well, better for us to gain a head start. See you there, Viscount. Pietro shouted as he grabbed Wanda and took off, earning a chuckle from me. 1. Look after them, will you? Stark said, leaving me in the room with a raised brow. Well, I better get going now. Pietro was one smug bastard. Letting him get one up on me wouldn't only further irritate me but also inflate the quick-footed prick's ego. I phased through the building and took off while decreasing my weight but also maintaining the same force as I pushed forward. Chapter 16. Target marked. Current running speed, 1,539 milliseconds. Not bad for over a week's worth of improvements. But still not enough. His speed was good, but compared to what speed was, he was damn slow. I was flying without air resistance and the almost negative influence of gravity acting on me, which meant no friction or impact lag. I'm increasing your workload. I whispered in his ears, causing him to jerk before his face contorted into an alarmed expression. You too, Wanda. They were such a lively pair. But then I remembered the result of the recent search I did a few days ago and a frown stained my thick red face. Their mother was unfaithful, or rather she didn't know her children didn't belong to the man who later became her husband. They were Magneto's children, all right. They were probably conceived from a past tryst between their mother and Eric, though they remained blissfully unaware. Whether I liked it or not, they deserved to know the truth without any filters. I truly cared for them, so there was no way I could afford to keep this for them. Well, I can tell them after they are done with their increased workload. I rightfully postponed it. I turned around and saw Pietro trying his best to catch up to me, which made me smile warm-heartedly at him. Naive. I blasted myself further ahead, leaving Pietro with only a yellow trail and a timer. Since he wanted to race me so much, he'd better go all out. Degree. General POV. Steve had called Banner and Natasha to have a discussion with them on their actions moving forward. It's rare for you to call such a meeting when there's nothing going on. There is, isn't there? Something going on. Banner, as usual, was very perceptive about such things. Fugitive survival skill 101. Natasha remained silent as she waited for Steve to speak what he had in mind, knowing it was quite serious given Steve's disposition. I was recently brought to the idea that I might have been a little selfish, and that has resulted in quite a few unfortunate events. Steve started. I am stranded here, with no hope of going back. I've lost everything I once held dear, so I cling on to the only thing that reminded me of who I was. Steve's voice grew hoarse as he remembered what he saw when Wanda got in his head. Stark had said he doesn't trust a man without a dark side, but his was carefully hidden under normalcy. What are you saying, Steve? Natasha asked, a little nervous about his reply despite what her stoic facade might tell. Unlike me, all of you have a life outside these walls and it would be hypocritical of me to expect me not to yearn for it. So, I want you to know that whatever you decide does not in any way change what I feel about you. This, pointing all around, is all I can do. It's my only identity left. The Avengers were made to battle world threats, but that doesn't mean forsake your remaining lives for it. That's all I have to say. He stood up as he finished what he had to say and left the room for the two of them. Bruce. Natasha looked at Bruce, knowing what his answer would be. Bruce sighed before turning to Natasha with a sad expression on his face. I'll wait for your decision. He stood up and left, leaving Natasha alone in the room with a downcast face. Degree. Vision POV. Of course they would lose. It wasn't even a race with how slow the Quicksilver was. He was 3 minutes late despite running at his top speed while I wasn't even near mine. Quite a disparity, but it's a work in progress all things considered. The person I met upon my return was surprisingly Sam Wilson, who looked as if he was just coming back from a mission as he was dressed in his full gear. Hey Vision. Went out? He asked as he walked beside me. Yes. The city was quite a sight to see, though too congested for my liking. He laughed for a bit before nodding in understanding. Well, that's New York for ya. See you around, Vision. I need to holla at the captain for a bit. He waved me off as he took another route towards Steve's room. On getting to my room, the first thing I did was closing every lighting in the room with a mental command. I then projected the information I got from Stark on one side while I brought up mine on the other. Since I don't know any truth in regards to the Mind Stone, compare both of them and link out the similarities. Tab the conclusion and cross-reference it with both mine and Stark's conjectures. Task generated, data analysis completed. Like I thought, when it comes to energy, Stark was at the forefront ahead of everybody else. His conjectures and theories on making a pseudo-Mind Stone arc reactor which had a vastly purer energy than anything on Earth was even better than mine. But still, those pseudo-reactors wouldn't be enough for me. I need something more since I was a lot stronger than what Vision was at this time and vastly so in the ever-nearing future. How's the scan of my body coming along? Status, ongoing. Huh? That's surprising. I thought it'd be done by now. The processed ore's properties are numerous and mostly unknown. Taking all possibilities into account will increase the processing time by an inconclusive duration. Just why are things hard to fully understand in this universe? Everything of little importance just have to have that unexplored potential. Fine. Note out all the properties and run their data through what we know of the Mind Stone. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Task updated. Cross-referencing vibranium body properties against acquired data of the Mind Stone and seeing how it affects known abilities. I need some vibranium to work with. That isn't me. Page Friday for some vibranium. Well then, in the meantime, I believe some light exercise and revelation are in store for a particular duo. Chapter 17. I did contemplate telling the two about who was possibly their real father, but then I thought, why would I want to do that? There was no merit, not to me or them, if they were to find out. They'd only worry more if they find out that their father was some kind of 90s bogeyman. It's not as if knowing that particular bit was going to help them in some way or the other. Rather than just opening up a can of inconclusive worms, I decided to continue doing what I was quite good at. 1. With some applications of my powers like density manipulation and molecular deconstruction, I could actually decrease and increase my size, well, at least to a level. Turns out getting smaller was a lot harder than growing bigger. 6. With a few of my scans done, a lot of things started to make more sense than they did initially. Take for example, using my psychic immunity along with my limited control over electromagnetic waves, I could actually pick up on the frequency the brain vibrates at when someone thinks or when the brain is active. It's quite an archaic way of mind reading, but I could easily boost it with the Mind Stone and voila, telepathy. Using the now custom-made telepathy along with energy projection, it becomes something like light manipulation, or put more aptly, hard light construct. The applications started piling up as soon as the results of my scans came back. 7. Coupled with the data I got from Stark, it became a lot easier for the information and conjectures to meet across a similar path and bear something new. Along with a lot of good that came with these findings, it wasn't without a healthy dose of bad. Firstly was that while my body was impervious to most things, it wasn't entirely infallible. Vibranium had a way it reacted to certain frequencies which made it behave differently from its other states, and sometimes it takes on a new form due to the frequency it's vibrating at. 5. The problem with this was that vibranium was in a lot of ways susceptible to magnetic and electrical discharges. Its properties could be greatly hindered if someone could tap into the negative effects these two energy forms had on the metal, which conversely meant I was prone to danger, though not widely known, was still a form of danger nonetheless. I could offset this negative effect with my own electromagnetic field, but that was not a sure or solid solution since that too could be overwhelmed. Frequencies were such an underestimated phenomenon that isn't usually given its due credit in the superhero community and likewise universes. A simple understanding of this property was what Vibe and Reverb could do in the Flash series. They could open portals to the multiverse as if it was nothing and even shut down the electrical discharges in a speedster's body. 1. Right now I was running speculations on how different frequencies could affect my body as a whole, but unfortunately it wasn't making any headway. Do you know how wide the Hertz range is? Easily in the trillions, that's how wide it is. 3. That aside, the result of my body scan came and its efficiency came at an astonishing 89%. Whatever 100% was, the words impenetrable, peak optimization, perfect energy synchronicity, perfectly malleable, optimal adaptation, and whatever terms it used to describe it made me easily accept its 89% rating. It also highlighted one of this body's major flaws as the composition of biological cells, which was quite a bummer. While it was extremely fun being a robot, there were quite a few things I need human biology for. I might be Vision, but I wasn't the Messiah Ultron wanted to be. 8. So yeah, that so-called flaw was staying. I'll just have to find a way around it if nothing else happens. 4. That aside, I could also do some slight modifications to my android body, like weaponizing quite a few parts just for the kick of it. Due to the fact that I couldn't easily decrease my height to whatever limit I wanted, the modifications I could do in the future would be limited, but that's easily bypassed when nanotechnology was taken into account. From what I could understand, while Hank Pym might have already created the Pym particles, he didn't make it publicly known since he was afraid it'll just kill his family faster, since you really can't trust the government. 1. What the public knew was that Stark and Richard were actually researching nanotechnology as the next step in mechanical breakthrough. And with the two of them being blissfully unaware of Hank Pym's achievements, it automatically catapulted me to the forefront. Not that there was anyone I could brag to about it. 2. Unfortunately for me, Hank was quite thorough, since he didn't leave a trace of his research on anything digital, since he was afraid he'd lose it that way. Even what S.H.I.E.L.D. had was incomplete research, nothing they could make headway on, but at least I had a perspective to begin with, and with the versatility of vibranium added to the mix, I believe I'll crack it way sooner than expected. 3. Merging psychic immunity and electromagnetic subset. Due to the high influence of the Mind Stone and its high compatibility with both abilities, merging result has been amplified. Telepathy. Would you look at that? 1. What if I combine telepathy, technopathy, energy projection, and electromagnetic manipulation? Psionic control, maybe? Too bad. I was sure that the merging would fail either because of the Mind Stone or the level of the other abilities. Due to being heavily influenced by the Mind Stone, I could already feel, even without testing it out, that my telepathy was very strong. Could someone even read my mind at this level? I wasn't sure, but there also was no such thing as absolutes in this reality. So fingers crossed. 4. Going back to the few highlighted flaws of my body and the possibilities of more in the future, I wanted to build something that could house a part of my consciousness. The most important part that coordinated who I was at the core, and not Ogvision, but I'd have to build something that'll be able to house the ever-increasing trillions of terabytes of data and also act as a secondary body while I upgrade this one. 7. This was the best bod biology and science could conjure up. I wasn't just going to toss it away from a new body that I wasn't sure could be better than this one. 1. I could make a lot of modifications to this one since it also had the highest compatibility with the Mind Stone, which would make future upgrades better. The idea of having secondary bodies was cool, but that was just all what they would be, secondary bodies. Backup plans in case of an unforeseen emergency. 6. I pulled up one of my past research and sifted through it. Task completed. Data and information of selected individuals have been categorized under different tags. The information I could get on a lot of people were very limited and mostly irrelevant to what I truly wanted to know. The Eternals were quite easy to find since I knew that they didn't change their names, and also had a sketch of each of them according to their appearance in the cinematic universes, and I was pleased when I actually found them, at least most of them. 2. A few of them were missing or haven't been seen for years, which was normal, so I shelved that for later. I made sure not to skim through Von Doom's network all that much. Yeah, no provoking the guy if it could be helped. 14. The Fantastic Fours were easily obtainable, as were the public information of the X-Men's. They were still in their budding years, so no back-to-back apocalyptic shit happening yet. Small graces, right? 2. I also kept an eye on the nuisances that were the American government, like they always were, keeping an eye on what they were putting together for their Accord bill to be passed. I just ignored them in favor of digging quite a few dirts I could find on them. Quid pro quo, bitches. 2. They actually wanted me as a part of their military weapons research, which was a fancy way of saying come be our experiment. I just didn't have the time to be so focused on them. Sure, they could be a problem going down the line, but that was only if I was someone like Stark or Banner. They could do anything they wanted, and while I wouldn't go to the extreme end of killing them unless they absolutely pushed it, the most I'd do is just up and leave if no one grows a backbone. 1. Unlike them, who are blissfully ignorant, the only thing keeping me from turning psychotic from paranoia was just the super hyper AI I had for a brain. Who knew a cold logical rationality sometimes helps with insanity? 4. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. Wanda Maximoff POV. 4. Damn, who knew a robot could be this hardcore? I can't feel my legs, Wanda. I rolled my eyes at my brother's incessant rantings, knowing fully well that he was the reason why Vision increased the amount and time limit of our training. 18. Help me up. I glared mockingly at his sprawled form on the ground. Vision had left quite early, looking preoccupied with something, but he made sure we finished our quota before he left. He's not just a robot, Pietro. I couldn't help but subconsciously correct him, and only realized what I did after the words left my mouth. What do you mean? He finally managed to sit down and faced me, looking confused and also sarcastically mocking me. His face didn't need to show the expression because I could already feel it. I don't really know. It's just that he feels a lot different than any of Stark's armored suits or even Ultron. He feels almost alive, like a human being. I really can't explain it, but I've never felt like he was a robot or something like that when he was around me. It feels just like talking to someone like Thor or Bruce. I'd instinctively know that there's something more to him, but never what. Unless he actively showed it, no one would know he's a robot. He was so real that even the way he felt was 10. You're right. Doesn't take away from the fact that he's a slave driver. Pietro said, as if stating an absolute fact, and I couldn't help but agree with him. 7. Since the beginning he's always been looking out for the both of us. I could tell, talking to us, being there if we wanted him to be, even training us to become stronger. Sigh. Maybe it's best I don't think too much about it. Vision is too complicated to be understood so easily. Well, even though I say that, at the end it doesn't matter what he is. I'm just glad Vis is here. I raised an eyebrow at that. When did you start calling him Vis? This wasn't the first time he's called him that, and Vision doesn't seem to mind much about it. 8. Oh, that? I just came up with it as a nickname and he liked it. He sniffed his armpits and reeled back in disgust at the smell before looking back at me. Be back, Wanda. I have to freshen up. 5. He ran off in a streak of blue and white, leaving me alone in this training space. I looked at my hands, and ghostly red wisps of energy started cloaking it until it was fully covered. He once pointed out that my ability's only limit was only due to my applications, so I chuckled and shook my head at the ridiculous thought that just came to me. That would be too terrifying if it was possible. 4. I wonder what Vision is doing. I thought for a bit on whether to call him but shrugged it off. I can ask him all I want later. Degree. Nick Fury POV. 1. I hate this. I absolutely fucking hate this. You'd think people like these who were actually in the know about what was really happening in the world and beyond would have an expanded worldview, so to speak, and at least put down some of their greed and make their moral lines bolder when the need arise, but no. 4. They're all just a bunch of old greedy fools who still think connections and shares are what's still important in today's age. 4. Even my decades of experience was hard-pressed to suppress the scowl of utter irritation that threatened to mark my face as I read through what they decided to do in order to curb the Avengers' growing influence. It was shoddy work at best, and given that I can spot it easily with one eye, no doubt Stark and Steve can also do the same, and if what I hear of that Vision is true, it's pretty easy to see how this is gonna blow up to high heavens. The Avengers were on thin ice with this, not only against the government but also against themselves. This accord will be the proverbial writing on the wall that fucks everything over. Does Stark knows this? 2. Yes, sir. He hasn't said anything since he got the files. Maria Hill said as she went through a file of her own. I don't think there's much we can do on this one, boss. I laughed at that. How ironic is that? There's nothing Nick Fury can do about a bunch of senile backdated fools playing with what they don't understand. You're right. It's time they pick up after themselves. I can't always be there to clean up after them. They'll get spoiled that way. I gave the files a once-over and for a brief moment, my eye paused on the name written on it. The Avengers is theirs to do what they want with it. Give the kids their toys and a little autonomy and you'll see how much hell they can raise. Still, I don't like how this is moving all at once. I know there's something greater at play here and I need to know what it really is. Who's moving frantically behind the back seats? What's Ross been doing? That man was the very definition of a sly fox and wasn't above using any means to get it. His voice hasn't been all that loud and it's sending all sorts of warning bells in my head. Nothing much as far as we know. He recently clocked in at a base in Nevada and he's been under for the last week and counting. Suspicious. The Ross I know won't let a chance like this pass him by. Notify me if there's any suspicious movements on his end. Yes, sir. Well, I've done all I could. Hope you boys can pick up the slack and catch up. The world's been getting a lot strange since the invasion. It's quite scary at times. I looked at the information on my tablet about a few talented individuals that been cropping up and dressed up quite colorfully. 5. It's a strange world we live in. 8. Chapter 19. Vision POV. It's been almost 2 months since the most trippiest experience of my life happened to me and I got stuck in the body of an overpowered yet sidelined AI synthezoid of the Marvel Universe. My experiences so far have been nothing but what I would consider my new standard. I didn't do much in terms of speaking with or spending time with the team. Not that I didn't want to, but I just had more important things to do. It wasn't like I didn't talk to them at all. No, I've talked to everyone in the compound, but my time doing that or being outside in particular was very short compared to the times I spent indoors. Most of my focus had been on how to go about unevolving myself with the Mind Stone since it was hands down the strongest thing anyone had. 4. I've been able to access a lot of things from the Mind Stone, from something as basic as increasing my processing power to merging abilities. Personally, I'd say telepathy was a pretty busted skill since it was in a way psychokinesis, and using it along with my other abilities were quite a fun thing to do. 4. It greatly decreased the strain and limit I had when using abilities that granted me control of things like manipulation or even technopathy. It also made me connect with the Mind Stone in a way that was quite impossible to do before. Granted, I still was nowhere with fully understanding or perfectly synergizing myself with it, but it was work in progress, right? I did spend some time with the twins, but it was mostly them coming around if they had nothing to do or were bored, mostly Pietro. As a speedster, Pietro was prone to get too bored when he remained stationary in a particular place for too long due to his hypermetabolism, which increased his brain activity. It also didn't help that he received his speed a little too late, which made him and his sister a mutate instead of a mutant. Maybe that was why Eric didn't come for them like he did in the other universes. 7. Whatever the reason may be, something told me that it wouldn't take that long before he decides to show up and take them under his wings. Now, I may be part logical machine, but like hell I was going to allow him brainwash them. Given their present fragile mental state, it wouldn't surprise me if he brings up their past mistakes and twists them in a convoluted way that preys on their guilt, and being the master manipulator that he is, all things considered, he could make it work, if I was still a dumb robot, that is. 5. I need a way to ease them into it. Suddenly coming out of the blue and saying your dead dad is not your real dad. Your real dad is a world-class terrorist that world leaders are afraid of is definitely not a good conversation starter. 2. I don't know exactly how strong their trust for me is yet, but I think I'll have to imprint it a little more heavily before opening up to them about it. I looked up and saw that my detached palm was twitching and had smoke coming out of it. Cancel sequence. I sighed as that was another instance of failed experiments I had been running on myself. I had tried stealthily hacking the systems inside Wakanda, but I was hit with a load of surprise, not that much, when it failed. 5. Just like Von Doom's country, Latveria, the monarchy of Wakanda had their own isolated data network, which meant that they were cut off from the rest of the world's internet network, which was also why no country had any useful information on them or anything that was substantial. Hell, no one knows what the real country looks like. 5. The reason I wanted to snoop inside their network was to have a peek of their research materials, most importantly those on vibranium and how their young genius princess was able to molecularly deconstruct it into nanoparticles, that and the biological benefits of it. 2. The latter research was obviously not for me but for future purposes. I wonder if being made up from vibranium and unaligned biological cells makes me a full Wakanda citizen? Now isn't that a thought? 11. It was a bummer that I couldn't just get a free pass into the thing, but that much was expected when not even Ultron, Jarvis, or Tony Stark could get inside. 2. I had to take the longer route with progressive experimenting due to that setback, and so far it hasn't yielded any worthwhile result. Yes, it hasn't been that long since I started, but I don't exactly have that long to wait either. Speaking of how long, I've registered Sam Wilson taking off for longer periods of time from the compound, which gave me an inkling that a mission was around the corner. Just the change of pace I needed. 1. I knew I'd eventually have a role to play and a heavy presence in this world, but I wonder how I should go about it. Should I go for the powerful, yet mysterious persona? 11. Or maybe the advanced AI peace mediator that has the strength and voice to back it up. 14. Those were both good routes to take, but maybe I could also go for the in-betweener. The person, or thing if we are to be racially specific, that stands at the junction point between all the hidden and unhidden groups of people in this world and the general populace. Decisions. I mean, my purpose is to be the vision I want, and I know what to do to get to that end in a sense, but it was how I want to go about it. I wasn't against any of them, but hey, appearance matters a lot. Like a lot. Especially in a world like this. 1. And not to mention how the public will most likely receive my presence due to me being a robot of sorts. The cultured men, like Sam and Pietro, are no doubt gonna be cool about it, but the rest of the public that guzzle up the government's nonsense are really going to be a pain up my impenetrable vibranium behind. 6. I give freely to everyone, zero fucks, but Karens are a pain to deal with for a reason. 8. What path do you think Vision should go? The Godfather, the Mediator, or Giga Chad? 72. Chapter 20. A/N. I know this isn't that important, but I finally was able to decide a character image for Vision's human look. I'm not that big on AI images, so it's definitely not that. The choices were between Henry Cavill, Og Vision, Paul Bettany, and Paul Walker, and the winner is 30. My deductions had been correct, as Steve had called for a round table where he shared information about a military base turned terrorist hideouts where it had been confirmed that they were dealing in stolen Chitauri tech and even some Ultron droids. 3. The Chitauri tech was understandable, but the Ultron droid, and not so much. The only people who were at the scene and were rounding up the empty cocoon of a body were the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. 1. Obviously there was no way for us to secure all the parts on our own, so S.H.I.E.L.D. was tasked with rounding them up and delivering them safely to Stark so he could make sure Ultron wasn't coming back using those carcasses in any possible way. 1. You just can't trust the government to keep their hands to themselves, can you? Natasha said sarcastically. Steve had a frustrated and wry smile on his face at Natasha's words. On my side, I was busy downloading and skimming through the data presented. The base was an old Irish military camp during the Second World War near the foot of a mountain, which made advancing towards it a hard deal since they could spot us, not that it matters if they did. 1. So how are we taking this base? I asked. I could just clear out the thing, but I could guess this was a sort of training montage for Pietro and Wanda. It was only just now that I realized that the Avengers had no idea of my extensive capabilities, except only what I made known during the Battle of Sokovia, and I liked it that way. 6. Steve was quite trusting in a way I would consider foolish, but I guess his charisma covers up for that very well. I was thinking of putting the new recruits to field work to see how they coordinate, he said while directing a look between Wanda and Pietro, the latter who looked on expectantly, before stopping at me. I tilted my head in confusion as he looked at me. He smiled at me as if he just understood something. I guess I don't need to worry much about you. I didn't answer him since my answer was very obvious, and then turned to look at the other people in the room and raised the question I've been meaning to ask since the beginning. Where's Banner? Steve became awkward while Natasha didn't have so much as a twitch in her expression. Bruce won't be joining us for this mission, Steve said, but I'd already gotten the gist of it. Got it. Unlike the others, Bruce's situation was a bit complicated because even if he accepted the Hulk, his problem wouldn't stop there. There were different stages to the Hulk, and just getting rid of one would only make his other traumas rear their heads in the form of a green monster. 2. He was also the strongest Avenger currently outside of Thor. Even I would be hard-pressed to knock out a fully raging Hulk. I would have a better chance facing off against Thor than Hulk. 14. It wasn't much of who was stronger, but the compatibility between myself and the both of them. Maybe I'll find a chance to have a word with him after the raid is done. So, Vision, since you are overseeing Wanda and Pietro's training, how do you think they'll function? Natasha asked, bringing back our topic to the matter at hand. They should be fine with a little bit of supervision, so no worries there. Pietro had already broken Mach 6, already cruising his way through 2000 M/S, and Wanda was getting quite good and innovative with her constructs and hex blasts. 1. The both of them looked at me in surprise, not sure why they would, but it's the truth. The two of them had an almost perfect teamwork and synergy with each other that was there even before they started training. The training just helped make it more pronounced and efficient. I see. Well, since you say so, we'll have to take it at face value until proven otherwise, Natasha said coolly. Did I mention that I beat her once when she tried to train me and the twins? 6. They basically were pushing me into boot camp with the twins and Sam, but I couldn't allow that. Now can I? It was a very cliché way of exerting dominance and letting them know I wasn't to be joked around, and I respect that Natasha easily accepted that. She left me to train Pietro and Wanda in the way I found efficient and only came to check up on them a few times to see their progress. So are we going to finally address why there's a bunch of Ultron droids in Ireland? Wanda asked. Well, Wanda, there's this thing known as politics, and I don't know if you've heard, but they can be real. 1. Bastards. They can be real bastards. Natasha completed Sam's statement, not that Wanda was stupid enough to miss it. 2. And let me guess, we can't do anything about it. She asked as if already knowing the answer, which was something we all did. If we can get evidence, then it'd be easy to sympathize. But unfortunately we got nothing. Sam replied. I'll work on that, I said, catching them by surprise. We have the resources, we will try to find out who's behind it. It'll help us gain some distance from them. 1. Yeah, and conversely make them want to put a leash on us even more, Natasha rebutted. I knew her fears, but they will have to learn, sooner than later, that politics is the last thing they need to worry about. There will be accountability, yes, but we can't have any government have a deciding power over us or our actions. Benefits and saving their own lives were the only things that mattered when politics were involved. Such things frankly disgusted me. They will want to put one on us sooner anyway. Better to fight the growing symptoms than let it fester into a virus. Have I always been this wise? I mean, sure I've read Plato, Aristotle, and a few lines from Washington, but now I'm suddenly giving out Sun Tzu vibes. 18. Was it because of my elevated thought process or something else? Whatever it was, I don't care because I'm so grinding the hell out of this, Al Capone style. Why, I understand the reason for the talks going on. Letting those old coots decide our every line of action isn't going to be a good thing. Trust me on this. Sam said. 2. Can we please table this discussion for another time? The Accords haven't even been given a hearing, so let's keep it aside until then. We have more important things to focus on right now. Steve interjected before this particular line of conversation could go any further. I already had a few plans in place in case the Accords were ever given a favorable hearing, but those will have to wait for now. No need to worry about something so trivial. The Accords on their own were nothing if the Avengers were united, and all it'd do is impede our movements quite a bit due to their persistent nuisance, but that's easily avoidable in most scenarios. My only concerns were how the Accords would affect the upcoming Civil War if the mutants and other heroes got involved. It can quickly escalate into something else entirely if the comics were anything to go by. 8. Tony can't come because he's easily high profile and we don't want the attention this early, so it's gonna be just us. Steve grabbed everybody's attention as he started laying out the plans and alternatives in case for any possible unexpected developments. Vision, can you get inside stealthily once we draw their attention? I nodded. Then you will pave the way for Pietro and Wanda to enter while we draw outward fire to ourselves. Try and find out what they want the droids for. Trafficking, weapons deal, supply chains, and investors. Anything you can find. We need to find the source of the leak before this becomes something else. Steve said with all seriousness, which anyone paying attention to the news will understand why. After the Chitauri invasion, high-level crime syndicates somehow got their hands on modified alien tech and became unbridled in their activities since the police couldn't match their weaponry. It is something that's still ongoing till now. Suit up. We leave in 10, 2. Degree. Chapter 21. Chapter 21. A/N. Damn, just woke up and saw the time. Degree. The rest left to suit up, which left me and Pietro in the hangar since I don't actually need a wardrobe change and Pietro literally speed ran his. One thing I've noticed is that Marvel heroes had less qualms when it came to killing, unlike DC. I also noticed it during the first drug bust we did a while back. The both of them had no reaction even when some drug dealers died in front of them. Must be due to what they saw growing up. As for me, well, I don't have that much of a reaction to it either. Right and wrong are a little bit confusing and hard to differentiate when you run your actions through logical codes. Which are all the proof I need to know that I'm still human somewhere underneath this fantastic vibranium ball. What's up with you, Vis? You've been quiet for a while. Pietro asked while looking over the controls of the Quinjet. Nothing. Just something probably inconsequential. I replied. Probably. I said absent-mindedly. There's something fundamentally different about the two comic realities. The heroes here were more realistic, or at least they felt more real to me, than what I know about DC. Maybe it's because I'm living here, so a biased opinion? I mean, it's not always about fighting cosmic entities that makes it make sense. Marvel's Earth was better portrayed than that of DC. Not in the sense of what it looked like or the promised utopia, but how the grounded nasties were shown without much filter, if any at all. It's times like these I remember you're not human. Pietro's words drew my attention with the way he said it. You mean I behave human most of the time? I asked, but he shook his head for a second before stopping and scrunched up his brows as if trying to properly formulate his words. Not exactly. It's like, hard to fully picture you as, you. You are hard to explain, you know that. I chuckled at how he tried and failed to explain my behavior. I didn't put much mind to it and turned to see Wanda making her way towards us. She wore a familiar getup that consisted of tight leather pants, a red corset and a jacket of the same color over it. A little change? Pietro asked as he saw her. Yes, this one's a bit more comfortable and I like it, she said. The rest came along soon after and we immediately took off. Degree. The flight itself took a little over an hour before we arrived a few kilometers away from the base. It was a little far, but it was best since they didn't want a full-on head-on assault. I believe this is where I take my leave. Without waiting for them to respond, I activated my cloaking device and became obscured from their view as I made my way towards the base while flying. Degree. POV after Vision left. That's a new one. Sam commented as even his googles failed to pick up Vision's signatures. Steve didn't say anything and just signaled Pietro to keep an eye on his sister, which he received an affirmation to before the boy picked up his sister and disappeared in a blur. Damn, even the kids today got something going on for them. Kinda hard to keep up with that if I'm being honest. Sam whistled at Pietro's speed. Yeah, tell me about it. It kinda makes you wonder why you're even here in the first place. Natasha said wistfully. Being among people like Thor, who was a literal god, Bruce, who was wrath incarnate and an absolute monster, Tony, who didn't need anything to be said about, even Steve, who was a super soldier with an inhumane physique, and then the new ones. Sam, Vision, Pietro, Wanda. Out of the four of them, Sam was the least impressive, but he still piloted an exoskeleton that allowed him to fly. Pietro could run over 5 times the speed of sound and Wanda was a menace when she used her abilities. And then there was Vision. Even if she didn't show it, he had quite the presence whenever he was in a room, even when he wasn't doing or saying anything. He was like the combination of a serious no-nonsense Stark, Bruce, Steve, Thor, and Wanda. Yet, it was hard to keep up with him. And here she was, with only her skills and stun batons trying to save the world. She just couldn't help but sigh as her thoughts got to that point. Times were changing too fast and it felt as if it was threatening to swallow people like her. Eyes up front, Romanoff. We're moving. Steve called out to her and snapped her from her mini daze as they started moving. Do you have any idea what Vision can do? Steve asked as they got within the peripheral of the base with a squadron of guards patrolling. Natasha shook her head. I haven't seen him using them all that much and I didn't bother to ask. She'd ask when they first started but the abilities he told her just didn't feel like all what he could do. Well, then we'll just have to watch. Ready. Natasha nodded before they both turned to look at Falcon, who grinned and then took to the sky, signaling the start of the raid. Degree. Vision POV. I got to the main base very quickly, which was a cave carved into the mountain. Are you guys ready? I asked the two of them. They both gave me a yes through the comms, and with that the raid officially started. I materialized my body in front of a few stunned soldiers who were too slow to move, and a blast of electricity burst out from my hand in a circular motion and electrocuted them. Go. I felt Pietro running deeper inside the mountain, so I just phased through the floor to the one underneath me. I had my eyes on the duo, and I have to say I am impressed by how casual they were taking this. Wanda took my advice and kept a red construct around her body that had two wriggling limb-like things that crackled with what looked like red lightning. A task was already generated with hacking all the devices here, so all I had to do was wait for all of them to be done and go through the acquired data, so I just focused on watching them for most of the time while also taking care of the strays that came my way screaming and pointing their guns at me. A psychic wave was emitted from the Mind Stone and they all pointed their guns at each other's knees and pulled the trigger. Vision, was that you? You felt that? I was even more surprised when she answered. Yes, interesting. So she could feel it even when I used the Mind Stone. What was that? A psychic burst. I was testing something out. I said lightly. They didn't have any resistance whatsoever towards telepathy, so there was no way they could fight it at all. Are you done with your section, because we'll be moving outwards a bit? I am. Pietro could join us anytime, so I called Wanda towards where I was. Soon enough she joined me and we both started going outside. Can you teach me how to do that? It's way different than how I do mine, she asked. No problem, was all I said before waving my hands and drawing all the hidden soldiers out into the open before Wanda blasted them with her hex. You're getting good, but your application is still linear. I meant what I said. She was a reality warper on a universal scale. Things like these should be easy. She grunted but said nothing as all her focus was on the incoming enemies while I just calmly watched. It was kind of underwhelming given that the soldiers here were mostly using normal guns rather than alien tech, since it just couldn't go around. The Avengers were actually taking this seriously while I just strolled through the base with Wanda at my side. Degree. Chapter 22. Acquired data fully assimilated. The prompt took away my focus from Wanda and drew it towards the specifics of the information I acquired. Just like speculated, the weapons were indeed trafficked, but the sources didn't have any digital stamp. Most likely it was something decided through signals or face-to-face. The data stamps present only contained the routes they were to take in delivering the weapons to a local crime lord in Dublin and nothing else. It was a simple moving job that didn't require too much information, so there wasn't much I could get from it. That wasn't to say I didn't get anything from this. Pietro, I need you to circle around the base and look for a man wearing a typical mafia boss getup with gold teeth and a tattoo on the back of his neck. Colm Fordinghur was the head of this mercenary/terrorist group, and it was a little surprising how he had come to acquire a lot of weapons and robots in such a short time and even move them around several continents. I don't know how Sam was able to track this guy and establish a connection to him all the way down here, but it sure is impressive work. Let's put this brain of mine to a little work. Process all data registries in this base, from mobile phones to smart watches, and cross-reference them with known associates of this group. Double down on that and spread a net across Ireland's network. We're looking for a mole. Task generated. Task completed. Try and hide as they might, there's just no way to escape the internet in today's age. All the data from every digital device, no matter how small, even the number of steps taken and rate per minutes of heartbeats, were easily accessed by me, and with those open networks from their phones and watches, I cross-paired it with any other new device that they must have been in proximity within the past few days to weeks, and voila! I've got my guy, or guys, and lady. Less than 5 seconds had passed since I generated the task and processed all the information gotten from it, and it was also then that Pietro arrived with Fordinghur, who looked shocked and confused by what was happening. Probably never met a speedster before, I'd bet. I caught him trying to sneak away. Unfortunately, he was too slow, Pietro said before disappearing in a blur to clean up the base around the entrance, since the inside was pretty much empty. The man in front of me only had one of those old modeled burner phones in him, probably to reduce the possibilities of being tracked or spyware. Unluckily for him. It was times like these where the Mind Stone really shined. A little technopathy mixed with an M-wave subset, radio waves, and I could already read it like an article on benefits of breathing. Reason why I couldn't find out his sneaky link to the American legislation when I was digging through their dirty files was because he wasn't the one in direct contact with them. Someone else was the middleman. I've already gotten the contact of his supplier, so I don't need him anymore. But seeing Wanda just standing there and watching everything with curiosity, wondering what I was going to do to him, I shoved him towards her. Try reading him, I said. She frowned a little at that and replied, but I thought they said I shouldn't go barging into people's heads. Then try another way. Rather than just barging like you called it, try compelling him to tell you what you want. I remembered watching that particular vampire series where they could compel people to do their biddings and wanted her to try it. It wasn't something complicated, but instead a basic application of telepathy. Though it'll be harder and sometimes fail to work on people with higher mental strength, which unfortunately wasn't the case for the dude in front of us. I don't understand. It's just like how you use your mind powers, but instead of crudely forcing your way through like last time, try tempting him to stop resisting you. It's more simple than it sounds, I explained. I didn't feel as if I was corrupting Wanda because this was honestly just a very basic application of any mental or psychic ability. And it's not as if she was a little girl who isn't conscious of her own actions. Am I preying on her trust? Yes. Am I manipulating her? No. Simples. I held Fording her in a kinetic hold to reduce all his movements to zero as Wanda steeled herself, her hands gaining a familiar red glow. Don't touch him. I stopped her. Rather than pushing it forward, just let it spread around him. She answered me with a nod of her head and retracted her hand while keeping a distance from Fording her. The intensity of her red aura decreased after that as she just continued staring at him with focus. You are already stronger than him in every way. He should answer to you. Her eyes gained a thick red tint at that as she continued staring. I could feel his brainwaves weakening and succumbing to Wanda's influence. His eyes lost their focus and his muscles relaxed under my hold. I think I got it, she said shakily. I don't think she ever thought of controlling people like this. What should I do now? She asked. I shrugged. I already got everything I would have needed from him, so I don't have reason for him being here for much longer. I don't know. You can ask him whatever you want. Some might think that I might be crazy for making Wanda as terrifying as she could be this early on, but for me it's all calculated risk. The stronger she is, the more better it is for me overall. How did you come up with this? She asked with incredulity after she relinquished her control of the man. I was experimenting with my abilities and found that out. It's also why I stressed that you shouldn't worry about boundaries. Anything you can think of, try to make your magic do it. I flicked her forehead and ignored the aggrieved expression on her face at my actions. Now then, 3 people were on my list, the 3 who were supplying alien tech to the black market. Looks like it's time for an upheaval. These guys just don't understand. Earth's internet and media was mine to manipulate. I could siphon billions of dollars from the market and no one would know a thing about it. It was my backyard. Wanda asked, pointing to the downed man. It'll be a hassle if the UN takes this as another international invasion after Sokovia. We've already gotten more than we needed. And here I was passing a sentence as if it was the most normal thing I've ever done. Having him alive and presenting him in front of a panel hearing against legislators and senates could very well work against us in the long run. Even if I refrained from killing as much as I could, I knew letting this guy live was not a good choice. It wasn't about whether he was bad but whether his impact was good or bad. With a flick of my fingers, a pin from one of the fallen terrorists pierced Fordingher's chest and punctured his aorta, slowly whitening it with every pump of blood. Let's go. I picked her up, making her yelp in surprise. Unlike Petro's movement, heavily propelling myself and partial phasing made it look as if we teleported through a short distance from Wanda's point of view. Give me a heads up before you do something like that again. She grumbled, but the only response I gave her was to drop her off the sky and left her to stick a superhero landing on her own while I just wiped out the strays from my high vantage point. Degree. Chapter 23. A/N. I just want to say thank you all for the crazy support so far. It's been wonderful and fun for me seeing how you all love this story. Tugs at me little heartstrings. Not to be a bearer of bad news, not that it's that much of one anyway, but I'll be starting my exam soon and while I'll still be posting during the time, I was just wanted to give you guys the heads up in case I end up not posting for a day or two. Degree. The base was easily taken care of with Pietro covering for all the present members, at least the ones that needed it, while Vision was like an immovable object of abstract horror as soon as he stationed himself above the base. Wanda with her constructs was able to move around the place mostly unimpeded since she was a mutate with both offensive and defensive capabilities that were active at the same time. Sam Wilson's battle was completely aerial, which was expected from his moniker. The snarky comments and hooping he did at every impossible turn showed just how much of an adrenaline junkie he was. Steve, as expected, was quite the fighter and also put on the eye-catching display of putting a whole squadron in the dirt and stepping on them with only a shield in his hand. That thing moved as if it had a mind of its own with the way it ricocheted at seemingly impossible angles and almost always ended up back in Steve's hands. Natasha wasn't behind any of them in the mastery of her fighting element. With 2 completely illegal stun batons and stunners wrapped around her body, her reflexes being quick and stunning, pun not actually intended, perfectly showcased her preferred style of fighting. Degree. Average cumulative combat effectiveness percentage of the group designated Avengers against groups under the tag possible future threats, 38%. This was the conclusion I came to, with the exception of Wanda and her brother, when I watched their fights. Thor, Hulk, and Stark were the heavy hitters of the group and without them, their average combat prowess was only that of a world-class elite strike group. The only reason I'm still waiting before the whole revamp I had in mind was because they still haven't gotten the government off their backs. Once the Accords dies down, my plans to strengthen the Avengers would then come into fruition. Why not just do it now? For the obvious reason that I'm still on the back foot on who wants to sign and who's against it. And also because most materials I'm in need of are still wanted. The main reason for the Accords, from what I've picked up, isn't even about the destruction that happened due to the Avengers' interventions but out of insecurity that this unhindered group could turn against them. A solid base for fear in a normal scenario, but this wasn't it. They just wanted the power to turn the Avengers towards their enemies. It's fucked up even now when I still think about it. I landed near the Quinjet with everybody already gathered around and Wanda giving me a stink eye. Did you manage to find something out, Vision? Yes, in fact. There's 2 members of the Senate and 1 member of the DOD. Sam whistled in shock and disbelief while Natasha and Steve looked as if they already expected something of this nature. Pietro and Wanda expressed their thoughts more openly, not too used to things like this. Do you know who they are? 1 RTD. General Williams and Stephen Crowley from the Senate and Teresa Makarov from the Department of Defense. Wait, did you just say Williams? Wartface Williams. Sam asked. He along with Natasha were the most knowledgeable ones among us about the Senate since he was part of a military division while the other was a spy. I pulled up Williams' profile and it turns out that name wasn't given in spite. He had a good part of his face covered in warts. Yes. Anything of importance about him? Sam crossed his arms with discomfort clear on his face as if he had hoped that this Williams was another person. It's not exactly a secret, but Williams is usually on the same page with Ross, agreeing with whatever he says. He's one of the reasons why Ross sometimes acts out of line and jurisdiction without any reproach or demotion. He's basically Ross' stand-in in the Senate. He said, Ross? Now that's a name I wasn't expecting to hear, since what I know says he's rarely been out of a particular military camp for a while now. Why would a close associate of Ross take part in alien tech trafficking? Though the guy had a few screw loose and a borderline psychotic obsession streak when it comes to Banner, he was a pretty hardcore general with an absolute justice point of view. I don't think he'd smuggle alien tech for money, since his cake of the budget pie is quite big every year. I think he'd rather research it than smuggle it. It could also be that this is just Williams' entire doing along with the other two. A mental command from me was all it took for the Quinjet to thrum to life as we all stepped in before it took off on its own. Huh, nice trick. Natasha commented. Pull up everything there is of Williams, Crowley, and Makarov on the internet. Task generated. Task completed. Degree. Later at the compound. I went through every digitally uploaded item there was about the three of them, and I was a little surprised that alien tech sells for quite a lot, like a lot. Even more so for the Ultron droids in pristine conditions that were only missing a power source. That itself was key to Stark's Iron Man armor. I swept all through their devices and unearthed everything they've buried throughout the years, even the atrociously cringe sex chats that almost forced me to factory reset my system's memory. Ross wasn't entirely a part of this deal gone wrong, as he was playing something even nastier, genetic mutation. Guess his decade-long obsession with Banner still hasn't gone down a bit, and I bet seeing Banner as a free man almost drove him crazy. He's been holed up in a military base in Nevada, and it was just my luck that I was having a hard time accessing whatever they were doing there. Except there was something that drew my attention to it. Genetic mutation. I doubt Ross would just settle with whatever small amounts of Banner's DNA, if he had any, and rely solely on it to take his research further. Since the advent of Captain America, Ross no longer believed that strongly on the adage of he who has the most guns, and started salivating the day he would have his own regiment of super soldiers. At least that had been the dream before Banner appeared. Banner's accident stoked Ross' ambitions to a vastly greater height than anything the man had ever dreamed possible. What guns? What missile? What tank? Even if assigned a whole battalion of those, none of them could compare to a single Hulk. He thought he'd won the gambit with Blinsky, but the idiot turned too greedy with power, and he was now imprisoned in a special facility that had had a special remodeling, courtesy of Tony Stark, to hold the monster in should he try to escape. Out of Ross' reach. With none of these resources available to him, he'd have to resort to the extreme ways he's infamously known for. Mutants. There have been quite a number of speculations concerning the new subhuman species, but most of the public didn't even know of their existence until recently, especially after the Chitauri invasion. They were pretty low-key, but that didn't mean someone of Ross' caliber didn't know about them. Fucking complications. Honestly, the more I deal with the arising complications, the more I just want to say fuck it and nuke somewhere and have people just leave me alone and chill the fuck out. For all that I know, Ross could be down there getting a mutate boost, or maybe he was about to Hulk out. Who knows? It would have been very easy if I just uploaded their dirty schemes and secrets, but politics were all about profits and benefits, and me doing that is bound to put all they needed to say was, it's all fake, and with it everything is rendered moot. Videos and evidence could be fabricated, and all they needed was a stupid reason to refute it, and that's what the newspaper will run, and not to mention how the public will guzzle everything up as if they were particularly thirsty about it. Springing everything on them at once is bound to cause some repercussions, and that's not to mention that my nature was still under debate. And if I exposed all of them like that, instead of it being against corrupt officials, it'll be something like who gave the android access and permission to invade American officials' privacy. I'd rather just wait for them to shoot their shot and be ready to execute the perfect counter and bring them down a notch at the same time while I'm at it. I think it's better I go talk to Banner before he leaves. We can't lose our current fear factor, whether he likes it or not. Degree. Chapter 23. Chapter 23. A/N. I just want to say thank you all for the crazy support so far. It's been wonderful and fun for me seeing how you all love this story. Tugs at me little heartstrings. Not to be a bearer of bad news, not that it's that much of one anyway, but I'll be starting my exam soon, and while I'll still be posting during the time, I was just wanted to give you guys the heads up in case I end up not posting for a day or two. 10. Degree. 2. The base was easily taken care of with Pietro covering for all the present members, at least the ones that needed it, while Vision was like a movable object of abstract horror as soon as he stationed himself above the base. Wanda with her constructs was able to move around the place mostly unimpeded, since she was a mutate with both offensive and defensive capabilities that were active at the same time. Sam Wilson's battle was completely aerial, which was expected from his moniker. The snarky comments and hooping he did at every impossible turn showed just how much of an adrenaline junkie he was. That thing moved as if it had a mind of its own with the way it ricocheted at seemingly impossible angles and almost always ended up back in Steve's hands. 10. Natasha wasn't behind any of them in the mastery of her fighting element. With 2 completely illegal stun batons and stunners wrapped around her body, her reflexes being quick and steady, perfectly showcased her preferred style of fighting. 3. Degree. Average cumulative combat effectiveness percentage of the group designated Avengers against groups under the tag possible future threats, 38%. 2. This was the conclusion I came to, with the exception of Wanda and her brother, when I watched their fights. Thor, Hulk, and Stark were the heavy hitters of the group, and without them, their average combat prowess was only that of a world-class elite strike group. The only reason I'm still waiting before the whole revamp I had in mind was because they still haven't gotten the government off their backs. Once the Accords dies down, my plans to strengthen the Avengers would then come into fruition. Why not just do it now? For the obvious reason that I'm still on the back foot on who wants to sign and who's against it. And also because most materials I'm in need of are still wanted. The main reason for the Accords, from what I've picked up, isn't even about the destruction that happened due to the Avengers' interventions but out of insecurity that this unhindered group could turn against them. 3. A solid base for fear in a normal scenario, but this wasn't it. They just wanted the power to turn the Avengers towards their enemies. It's fucked up even now when I still think about it. 2. I landed near the Quinjet with everybody already gathered around and Wanda giving me a stink eye. Did you manage to find something out, Vision? Yes, in fact. There's 2 members of the Senate and 1 member of the DOD. Sam whistled in shock and disbelief while Natasha and Steve looked as if they already expected something of this nature. Pietro and Wanda expressed their thoughts more openly, not too used to things like this. Do you know who they are? 1 RTD. General Williams and Stephen Crowley from the Senate and Teresa Makarov from the Department of Defense. 4. Wait, did you just say Williams? Wartface Williams. Sam asked. He along with Natasha were the most knowledgeable ones among us about the Senate since he was part of a military division while the other was a spy. I pulled up Williams' profile and it turns out that name wasn't given in spite. He had a good part of his face covered in warts. Yes. Anything of importance about him. Sam crossed his arms with discomfort clear on his face as if he had hoped that this Williams was another person. It's not exactly a secret, but Williams is usually on the same page with Ross, agreeing with whatever he says. He's one of the reasons why Ross sometimes acts out of line and jurisdiction without any reproach or demotion. He's basically Ross' stand-in in the Senate. He said. Ross? Now that's a name I wasn't expecting to hear since what I know says he's rarely been out of a particular military camp for a while now. Why would a close associate of Ross take part in alien tech trafficking? Though the guy had a few screw loose and a borderline psychotic obsession streak when it comes to Banner, he was a pretty hardcore general with an absolute justice point of view. 5. I don't think he'd smuggle alien tech for money since his cake of the budget pie is quite big every year. I think he'd rather research it than smuggle it. It could also be that this is just Williams' entire doing along with the other 2. 1. A mental command from me was all it took for the Quinjet to thrum to life as we all stepped in before it took off on its own. Huh, nice trick. Natasha commented. Pull up everything there is of Williams, Crowley, and Makarov on the internet. Task generated. Task completed. Degree. Later at the compound. I went through every digitally uploaded item there was about the 3 of them and I was a little surprised that alien tech sells for quite a lot, like a lot. Even more so for the Ultron droids in pristine conditions that were only missing a power source. That itself was key to Stark's Iron Man armor. 3. I swept all through their devices and unearthed everything they've buried throughout the years, even the atrociously cringe sex chats that almost forced me to factory reset my system's memory. Genetic mutation. 8. Guess his decade-long obsession with Banner still hasn't gone down a bit, and I bet seeing Banner as a free man almost drove him crazy. He's been holed up in a military base in Nevada and it was just my luck that I was having a hard time accessing whatever they were doing there. Genetic mutation. 2. I doubt Ross would just settle with whatever small amounts of Banner's DNA, if he had any, and rely solely on it to take his research further. Since the advent of Captain America, Ross no longer believed that strongly on the adage of he who has the most guns and started salivating the day he would have his own regent of super soldiers. 3. At least that had been the dream before Banner appeared. Banner's accident stoked Ross' ambitions to a vastly greater height than anything the man had ever dreamed possible. What guns? What tank? Even if assigned a whole battalion of those, none of them could compare to a single Hulk. He thought he'd won the gambit with Blinsky, but the idiot turned too greedy with power and he was now imprisoned in a special facility that had had a special remodeling, courtesy of Tony Stark, to hold the monster in should he try to escape. Out of Ross' reach. 8. With none of these resources available to him, he'd have to resort to the extreme ways he's infamously known for. Mutants. 1. There have been quite a number of speculations concerning the new subhuman species, but most of the public didn't even know of their existence until recently, especially after the Chitauri invasion. They were pretty low-key, but that didn't mean someone of Ross' caliber didn't know about them. Fucking complications. Honestly, the more I deal with the arising complications, the more I just want to say fuck it and move somewhere and have people just leave me alone and chill the fuck out. 4. For all that I know, Ross could be down there getting a mutate boost, or maybe he was about to Hulk out, who knows. 5. It would have been very easy if I just uploaded their dirty schemes and secrets, but politics were all about profits and benefits, and me doing that is bound to put the whole of America's parliament inside a hot pot, and once it comes to a scenario like that, all they needed to say was, it's all fake, and with it everything is rendered moot. 2. Videos and evidence could be fabricated and all they needed was a stupid reason to refute it, and that's what the newspaper will run, and not to mention how the public will guzzle everything up as if they were particularly thirsty about it. Springing everything on them at once is bound to cause some repercussions, and that's not to mention that my nature was still under debate. And if I exposed all of them like that, instead of it being against corrupt officials, it'll be something like who gave the android access and permission to invade American officials' privacy. 2. I'd rather just wait for them to shoot their shot and be ready to execute the perfect counter and bring them down a notch at the same time while I'm at it. 1. I think it's better I go talk to Banner before he leaves. We can't lose our current fear factor, whether he likes it or not. 5. Degree. You can find +5 Chapter 24. Chapter 24. Bruce Banner POV. I waited until the team came back from their mission before I decided to leave. I don't think I have it in me to just hightail it out at my earliest convenience when they were not around. As expected, the talk with Natasha had almost been my breaking point, and no matter how much she thought we had going on, she had no place in the heart of a monster like me. 13. I just couldn't do it to her. Not after. I already promised Steve that if it's another extinction-level disaster then I'd be sure to show up, and that's the most I can do. With the tension going on around because of the Accord and the international outcry, the last thing they needed was a code green. They already have their hands full with the Maximoff twins and Vision, the pardons for the twins, Vision's identity, Stark fighting for autonomy on behalf of Steve, and also Thor being off-world. The last thing they needed was another Hulk rampage. It would have been different had Thor been here, but I guess that's just the universe telling old Bruce that he's not getting anything for free. Maybe I can start in Seychelles. Tony did say it's a nice place to get the mood on, and it's also quiet. I was about to put away my bag inside the truck, but a very bland yet familiar voice called me to a stop. 1. Banner, mind if we have a talk? Oh good gracious, please let this not be the talk I'm thinking of. Sure, I got a bit of time to spare, I said, and he nodded before resting against the truck and looked at me with an almost human face. Taking a closer look at him now, I see that he's been making some modifications to his body, especially his head. The silver sheen of vibranium that crossed from the back of his head to where the Mind Stone was crowned was gone and looked like a normal head if not for the collar. 3. His neck on the other hand had traces of a metallic collar that was very high and covered his full neck. 1. He was wearing a white shirt and black vest matched with black pants, a look that I'm sure came from Tony, no doubt. 2. So what's it you wanted to talk about? We haven't had that much of a conversation that didn't revolve around my thoughts of the Mind Stone and deformities of a human body, so I'm not quite sure as to what to expect. You're leaving, right? The way he asked the question made me sigh. He wasn't asking if I was leaving but why I was leaving. What do you think? You're the one with the super processor for a brain after all. I gave him a half eye, but he held my stare for a moment before he sighed and scratched his head in an all-too-human motion. I think it's better if I stopped seeing him as some sort of advanced sentient robot and more as a person. So far, the number of times he's acted like a truly logical part machine was when he was making calculations for some experiments he wanted to perform. It's an impulsive decision at best. One born from fear and past insecurities, but I guess it's not actually my place to say that, is it? Makes me come off as self-righteous. He did put some thought into his words, that I could tell, but that didn't mean it didn't sting quite a bit. It's because you don't understand. You might think you do, but you don't. The Hulk isn't some beast that can be tamed. He might act friendly and sometimes display a bit of sentience, but he is anything but. All it takes is just a push, one single mistake, and everything around me starts crumbling down. 2. I could still remember, quite vividly like a very recent memory, the number of times such a thing had happened in the past. The result never changed. Not once was the end result different. Whenever the Hulk surfaces, it always ends up with people getting hurt. That was the curse that followed ever since it awakened in me. I can't risk another rampage. Vision. Not a single one. They think I like this? That I'm happy about my decision? For a long time, this has been the first place where I'm fully accepted, and yet I still have to leave because there's just no curing me. Face it. I'm the biggest nerve of the team. I'm a two-edged blade. I had to stop myself there before my emotions gets the better of me, or if it thinks I'm being cornered. Honestly, I can't deny any of what you just said. In fact, the reason why I'm here in the first place is just to try and convince you not to leave, but that might have been too conceited of me. I am not all-knowing after all. His voice was a tone lower as he said that. I can't blame him since I'm sure he was being objective in his calculations or whatever, about the importance of the Avengers sticking together, but there are just some things that you just have to throw away, despite their apparent importance. I'm not too happy about the Accord the UN were trying to push forward for obvious reasons, since I know better than anyone how messed up they were, but that was more reason for me not being here. No, you're not. I said. I'm going out on a limb here, but what if there was a way to fully be conscious of your alter ego's actions? What if you could really communicate with the Hulk? His question surprised me, but that died down immediately, as it was the same thing I'd wondered ever since that fateful day, but the following events of destruction after destruction convinced me otherwise. It's not possible, Vision. Don't do that. Don't give me hope. 1. I know it might be presumptuous of me to say this, but I fully believe it's possible. What? How? If it had been another person who had said this, I would have ignored them, but Vision was different. Even now, none of us still understood what he was capable of. Basic psychology, be aware of the other's presence. You already know the Hulk is its own person, so all you have to do is blur the line between the both of you as much as possible and try to understand the similarities around the blurred lines. He explained. And how do you suppose I do that? We're not exactly buddies despite what you guys might think due to his cooperation. He gave me a look that seemed really familiar to me, as if he was calling me stupid. How else can you do that? You'll have to frequently switch between Banner and Hulk until you both get on the same mental level. At least to some extent, as I believe his mental strength is vastly higher than yours. I reeled back in shock at the ludicrous words that came out of Vision's mouth with a tone that made it seem like a relatively normal thing to do. Frequently switching between myself and the Hulk? Did he not hear a word I said? I let that thing out, and all he's going to do is wreak havoc until he becomes bored of it. Oh, I see. The stupidity must come from Stark. Or maybe Jarvis' psyche of his creator. Otherwise this fully sentient synthezoid wouldn't speak this kind of heretical words. 1. And yet, what? Was all I could say. Leave the complications aside and simplify everything else. How can you expect to talk with something you keep pushing away? Because you can't talk to the Hulk. I took in deep and slow breaths to calm my erratic beating heart after shouting at Vision, who just stood there, waiting for me to catch my breath. You know that's a lie, right? Everyone in the team has had a form of conversation with him. Natasha can testify strongly to that. So why are you the one least interested in doing it? I just couldn't wrap my head about what he's saying at this point. Try talking to the Hulk? How was that even possible? You can take your time to think about it. Just know that I'll be happy to help if you decide to give it a try. He stood up and started walking back to the compound, but he stopped a few yards away from me and turned around. I have evidence to believe that Ross is overseeing or planning to undergo a genetic mutation experiment. Do with that piece of information what you will. And with that he was gone. Sigh. I need to clear my head. I entered the truck and drove off. What I needed now was a place devoid of any human presence to get my mind back in order. 10. Chapter 25. Chapter 25. Vision POV. My talk with Banner had let me realize something, and it was that I was too conceited in my understanding. Yes, I knew what would happen. Yes, I know how to help them deal with their weaknesses and problems. Yes, I can accelerate their growth. But all of those never did put into perspective how it was currently affecting them. At the end of the day, they were still people who had no choice but to deal with frustration, regrets, and all other emotional pressures that came with being a human, unlike me who could just turn them off if they get too strong or come in the way of logical thinking. Why do humans commit suicide when they know that there's nothing to gain from it, even when it sometimes goes against their religious beliefs? Why do they commit suicide even when they know, at the extreme back of their minds, that it can become better sometime down the line? The answer is simple. Humans, as sapient beings, make decisions mostly based on their emotions. They act as their emotions dictate, even when they know the consequences of their actions sometimes won't be in their favor. It's like going to a bar to get drunk due to a bad day even when you know you are lightweight or have an early shift the next morning. In my defense, it's how I now think. While I still keep my human traits and emotions on at most times, that was only a part of my composition as Vision. It's inevitable that I would also fall back into using logic rather than emotions. I didn't put much consideration into what Banner was currently feeling at the moment and only thought of how to get him out of his emotional bondage. While it was a good choice on my part, it nevertheless shows how lightly I took Banner's inner suffering. Hopefully he'll come around after getting his head cleared out, or I'd be forced to fish him out of whatever hole he chooses to hide in. Hey, I know I was being a little inconsiderate, but that doesn't mean I'll just let him run off into the sunset like that. I also left a tracker on him that can scan up to a kilometer in the case of any hostile. With Ross out there doing whatever and also the unexplainable event that stranded Hulk on Sakaar before the events of Ragnarok, there's just no way I'll leave him unsupervised. Wait, how will Thor deal with Ragnarok without Hulk? Meh. I shrugged since I knew the Thunder God could make do with whatever little he has. Hopefully I can find a way for interstellar travel before then, but fingers crossed on that. What I needed to focus on now was Ross, for whatever experiment he was doing, and also Williams to stop the illegal weapons shipment, and also get some Chitauri tech along the way. Degree. Scan all radio and data signals coming out from Ross base. Once you get a link in, scramble anything you can find and alert me. Order affirmed. Now let's start with Williams. I walked into a dim-lit room where Natasha and Sam were going through all the data I got from the base in Ireland. Vision, just who we needed. Sam exclaimed as I entered the room. Is there anything wrong? I asked. He shook his head and looked over at Natasha, who was pointing at a list of holographic documents from the office of RTD, General Williams. Having already gone through all these documents, I instantly recognized what they were trying to point out. They've been moving around, but I believe S.H.I.E.L.D.'s agents are going after them as we speak. But Williams having a connection with them, no matter how small, is a little bit surprising. Given that he deals in weaponry, it makes sense that he might have been interested in their research since S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't forthcoming with theirs. To be honest, I didn't put much thought in sending the Hydra remnants running around. They were at their last legs, and regardless of how much they struggle, they'll eventually be snuffed out and become redundant to the point that they become the next neighborhood cult. I think Fury will like this, Natasha said and tapped on her tablet to download a copy of that particular information to pass to the spy head. So how are we going to go about this? We have the information in our hands, but they can still use it against us in a way befitting outcasts. Simple. We give it to someone they can't touch in any way lest they get burned nasty. I suggested. Tony. I nodded. Out of all of us, Tony was the best one in a position to directly attack any of them. Even the president wasn't fully out of his strike zone. Perks of being a billionaire and also one of the country's backbone and major entrepreneurs. None of us had the presence and influence to drag a case against an army of congressmen on our own without having a high enough political presence of our own. The only reason why every single Avenger wasn't being hunted down at this moment was only due to Fury and Tony working together for autonomy, but they can't do it for much longer without showing just how vital autonomy was to the Avengers. If this were a team like the X-Men or even the Fantastic Four, then it would have been easier, but unfortunately this team consisted of an American war hero, an international spy wanted in over half the country she's been to, a runaway military experiment, a government hitman, an ex-military special agent, an alien god, and now a weird twin and a robot with human rights. Surprisingly, only Stark was in the clear. No matter how you flip it, more than half of us deserve to be locked behind bars for treason against the state for even thinking of being an autonomous body. Just pass everything to Stark and he'll know what to do with them. In the meantime, what we need to do is follow Williams' trail. If he could move such large amounts of Chitauri tech and robots, who knows who else can. But to do that we'll need to pull up on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s front doors. I told them my honest opinion. Since they couldn't do anything on the judicial front, it was better they focus on the kicking doors in front where they were good at. As for me, I'll be looking up Ross front. I don't know just how much things here might deviate, but from all what I know, this definitely wasn't the MCU, at least not fully. It might be what the MCU was supposed to be had they been successful in bringing in the other Marvel superhero franchise, and that's what made it harder for me since I'm basically flying blind. Not that I'm complaining. There were quite a few things I was however knowledgeable of, and one of those was that it was better for everyone if the Red Hulk never existed. Seeing how strong the Hulk currently was, it's easy to conclude that a Red Hulk would absolutely trash his purple spandex ass. What of Ross? Do you think he's in with Williams on this? Sam wanted to know, but I, however, shook my head. I don't think so. Here's a proposal. Why don't you run through S.H.I.E.L.D. for Williams and Hydra while I go through Ross? Was my suggestion. Only you? Natasha asked with no small amount of skepticism in her voice. I nodded. I would have taken Wanda and Pietro or one of them, but I needed the anonymity that would come with what I had in mind. Still, I assured her. Don't worry. I'll fall back if I can't handle a single military base. Oh. Sam made a face and focused intently on the screen in front of him while Natasha just smirked. I see you're finally coming out of your shell, she remarked. I have to. There's a whole new world out there for me to explore after all. Fair. She agreed. But don't forget to get out of there once you're found out. It'll be a shitstorm if we have to go against Ross for you breaking and entering a government base. I waved off her concern since that was my plan all along. Even if I were to make myself known,
it'll not be with my real face in front of someone like this.
You can find +5 chapters ahead in my Patreon. Patreon.com/QuackVader. Cheers. Comment. 35 comments. Vote. 2 left.